Hello everyone and welcome to episode 79 of Twitch Tales. Where did we leave off in episode 78? Well, Apists found themselves in the Feywild, a land of mystery and magic and fairies and fairy tales and fairy tale creatures. They have particularly found themselves at the mansion, at the home of an archfey, one of the extremely powerful fairy rulers, kind of like elves, but even more so, even more elf than elf. This particular one, this particular archfey, the Merry Gentleman, has shown an interest in Apis for some time because of their abilities as a Horizon Walker. That is the subclass of Ranger that we took, and it is a type of Ranger that can naturally feel out portals and portal energy and where the planes are weaker between two places, and the ability to travel between those planes using their own inherent natural magics. This is a particularly rare and unusual talent, and the Merry Gentleman, having some sort of interest in planes and planar travel, has taken an interest in Apis because of it and wants to train you up. So they asked you to come to their home, and eventually, after exhausting every other side quest you could, you eventually came to their home. You met them, you talked to them, you met a little fairy called Picnic, and then you were introduced to a centaur called Rikash. Rikash is a fighter, a warrior, and a trainer, and the Merry Gentleman has asked Rikash to train you in your abilities as a fighter. So you are in the midst of training up to your 2nd level in fighter. You are a 5-level ranger, 2-level fighter. You started last session with Rikash fighting you. You were fighting hand to hand with swordplay because you were told, look, your bow skills are already impressive. Your sword play needs some work, and that's because you choose to use a sword that is a +1 strength sword rather than your +3 dex sword. If Apis ever chose to go to a rapier or a finesse weapon like a dagger, a short sword, something like that, maybe, then maybe you could use your dexterity for fighting instead of your strength, and you'd be slightly better at it. But that's your choice as the character. You basically spent most of the session fighting with Rikash, round after round. They at some point used an action surge to beat you down and knock you unconscious, at which point one of the fairies of the local forest came and healed you up with a cure wounds and then got you back on your feet and straight into the fight again. You whittle down Rikash a little at a time, Rikash whittling you down a little at a time, until eventually they knocked you out again a 2nd time. And then just before they knock you out a 3rd time, I think it was only twice that you got defeated, and then you eventually got the final blow on Rikash, and with an unarmed strike from your 1st fighter level, with an unarmed strike, you channeled a planar warrior into the ring on your finger, knocking an extra chunk of damage into them at the time, and knocked them over. One of the fairies came over, woke them up, and Rikash said, "Okay, and now I know where we're starting with our training. I know where to pitch my my training level. That's enough for today. Go and do what you need to do for the rest of the hours of consciousness." They don't really talk in days here because the sun never changes in the Feywild. So, however, until you get tired, go deal with whatever. Come back to me after you've eaten again. So basically, come after dinner tomorrow in material plane terms, and they'll continue your training. So you went off to have some downtime. You decided that the best thing to do would be to explore the Merry Gentleman's library. You were told that you have free access to the place as if it's your home, to everywhere except for the Merry Gentleman's bedroom, the master bedroom. But you're allowed everywhere else, so you asked around, got some help from the fairies that work on his staff, and they took you to the library and said, one of the libraries, and said, what do you want to read about? You suggested a whole bunch of books, and they went away and got them for you. And that's where we're starting today. You have a big stack of books that have just been provided to you by these fairy librarians. In particular, you asked them to get you books on Horizon Walkers, if they have any books on Horizon Walkers, and they went away and got you 2 books on Horizon Walkers, or books that have information on Horizon Walkers in them at least. You asked them for a book on the sun ritual and the god of the sun in particular, Felrios. That's because in the Feywild, where the sun does not cycle around the planet, or rather the planet doesn't is tidally locked to the sun. In this realm, there is no dawn, there is no dusk. It's a permanent time of day, and the time of day only changes based on your geographic location of the Feywild planet. So any of your items, such as your divinatory dice and your lucky horseshoe, any of those items that come back on a long rest, at the end of a long rest when it's dawn time essentially, they don't seem to be recharging while you've been here in the Feywild. So there seems to be extra steps that you need to do, and you asked for a book on that, so they brought you a book on that. You also asked if they have any maps of the Feywild, so they brought you a map book. You asked for any books that they had on portals, and so they brought you 3 books on portals. You asked if they had any books on therianthropy, were curses, and they brought you 2 books on those. Then you noticed that there was a shelf of extra books that the Merry Gentleman has asked people not to touch. Don't touch these books. You also were given some writing material, yes, some paper and pen, paper and an ink pen and a bottle of ink. All right, so you've got a big stack of books, big old stack of books. You intend to spend the next several hours reading these books, presumably. It's an overwhelming amount of homework, yes. It was an overwhelming amount of homework for me to prepare these books. Thankfully, I just delegated that job to one of my mods, Fella. So shout out to Fella. Thank you very much for compiling the list of the books from the chat in my Discord. I asked the fans of Twitch Tales to just say, hey, give me some examples of titles of these books that you've just asked for, and I might use them in the game. Fella went through all of the suggestions that everybody was offering and put them in a list and ordered them by like the importance and the subject matter, and then highlighted the ones that he thought were the serious options rather than the silly pun ones that were being offered and things. And then eventually he also then went through all of the books that were offered and wrote a little content blurb for me. So it saved me a lot of work. GG Fella, thank you very much. All right, so we said at the end of last session that you were going to be starting with the Sun book, because in getting back your Lucky Horseshoe reroll once per day and your divinatory dice that you can ask a question of once a day, those are going to be important things to know. So you're gonna read the book on the Sun, and you're going to hopefully learn from that how to recharge these Dawn ability dice and these items and things. The book on the Sun that you grab is called Soul Survivor: How I Survived a Year Without the Sun by Oscar Tudek. As you start to flick into it, I'm going to have you roll an investigation check. This is your ability to speed read and scan for pertinent information. You're not going to read the entire book because you've told me as Apis that you're looking for specific information. So you're looking for information about how to recharge abilities. Now, because this book says that you survived a year, it's titled, it's about how to survive a year without the sun. It's you quickly learn that it is a journal-style book written in the style of a drama. Each of the chapters seems to be journal entries, and there are dramatic entries throughout the year, like animal attacks and this person discovering new areas and things. It seems like it's a journal of a person in the Shadowfell, where, as it happens, there's not a sun. So you're flicking through, you're looking for it. Take 20. All right, you can just take 20. So taking 20 means you take 20 minutes. And you just assume that in that 20 minutes you've rolled and rolled and rolled until eventually you got a nat 20. So you can find the information you need as much as you could have gotten with a nat 20. The downside to that is that it takes 20 minutes to do so, rather than if you roll for an investigation and just happen to get a 20 on your first roll, then it might only take you like 2 minutes to find the information that you're looking for. But in a situation like this, where you're basically just in downtime, sitting in a library, and time is not really necessarily of the essence, you can just take 20 if you wish. There's not really a downside to it. Sole Survivor with an SOL, yes, Silver Red Fox Gaming, which in this planet doesn't necessarily make sense as a pun, but this is a place where the Merry Gentleman has sourced books from other planes of existence as well. So it might be that a Horizon Walker from one of the universes where the sun is called Sol has written this, perhaps. Rather take 20. If we only get a couple, you don't only get a couple kills, so you can take 20 on any roll that has no drawback. So taking 20 on picking a lock is perfectly fine if you have no time pressure. You can take 20 minutes to make sure that you get a nat 20 and pick the lock. Taking 20 on picking a lock when somebody's chasing you, that's not a thing you can do because there are time pressures and there is a drawback to failing. Taking 20 on persuading someone is not a thing you can do because if you roll poorly, then that negates the possibility of you rolling again, like to try again. It's basically take 20 is for any situation where there is no downside to you continually rolling. Like, pick up that thing, make an athletics check. Oh, you got a 3. If there's nothing to say, I'm going to try pick it up again. Oh, you got a 7. Still not enough. I'm going to try pick it up again. You got a 14. You kind of budge it, but it doesn't really do anything. I'm going to pick it up again. Like, it's to stop that boring nature of repetition. If there's no downside to you failing, and you can just try the thing again, then you can take 20 on it, saying, I'm just gonna keep rolling until I get a 20, essentially. All right. So the chat seems to be interested in taking 20 on this book. So you are going to, rather than skim read, you're going to take a good 20 minutes of like reading at least a couple of pages of each chapter. It seems to be a journal of this gentleman. It seems to be written in first person. Oscar Tudek, the author, seems to have written this about spending a year in the Shadowfell. And it does focus on not just like Shadowfell denizens and things. He does reference a few times the monsters that he's faced, but it's never in explicit terms. He just talks about them in vague terms, like the monsters, for instance. He also talks about like how it wasn't an adventurer there. It seems like he was just living there. You see that his focus seems to be on the lack of light in the Shadowfell and how that is having an effect on him over time. You also can tell with your taking 20 that as the book goes on, his journal entries that have been dramatized seem to be devolving away from that of a sane person. It seems like the Shadowfell's influence on the psyche is having a more of an effect the deeper into this book that it goes. About halfway in, you see a chapter that says, My Saving Grace. The chapter title, My Saving Grace, it goes into saying, I was in the Feywild for about 3 months and almost losing my mind entirely when I found the item that saved me, the thing that allowed me to get out of there alive. It was a small wand that could illuminate on the tip, like a candle. That's all. Unfortunately, I could only use it a number of times per day before the magic in it was expended. After I expended that last charge the first time, it was almost the end for me. Losing the ability to illuminate the tip of this wand was such a heavy blow to my hope. The glimmer of hope that had re-emerged after finding it in the first place. That it threw me deeper into despair than I'd ever expected. Than I'd ever experienced. I was on my last end. I was on my last thread, and I very nearly finished it. But as a last-ditch effort, I cried out in desperation to the gods that I'd realized had forsaken me by sending me here. I cried out to Thelrios once more. Please, I need this. I was surprised to be transported in that moment. To this day, I don't know whether it was my mind, my soul, or my body, or a mixture of all. But I found myself in what I've later come to realize was an observatory. All at once, I was standing on the smooth stone of an enormous domed room, the stars spread across them. Around the room were two very prominent symbols, repeated again and again. Since that day, I've come to realize that these were symbols of Thelrios, the god of the sun, and Opala, the god of the moon. Some say these gods are lovers, some say they are brother and sister, some say they're even the same god in two different faces. It was in that domed room that I met an acolyte. I could not tell you what species they were, for they did not seem human, dwarf, elf, nor any of the common species that we meet day to day. Yet they spoke to me in a language that somehow I understood, despite knowing that it was not the common tongue. As god of the light, Thelrios appreciates being respected with light. You seem to be lost at sea, she told me. Lost in the infinite darkness of a nighttime floating in the middle of a dark ocean. Without sun, with a clouded night sky covering the stars and moon, how does a ship find light out here in the sea? She asked. Lanterns, I offered, candles, fire. That is how one creates light, she replied. But how does one find light? The light from outside is what you seek. The light from outside, Thelrios' light, is what you seek. So to get that light from outside, how does a ship at sea find it? In an instant, I was transported back to my abode, and I found that the wand, clutched still tightly in my hand, was illuminated once more. I knew that this final charge had been replaced for me for this one purpose. And immediately I knew what to do. I cupped my other hand around the light, shading it on one side and allowing the illumination to spill over the walls on the other. And then in a circular motion, I moved my hand around the wand, like that of a lighthouse, illuminating the darkness for those stuck at sea. A light from without, a way for the ships to find light, to find land, to know how close they are to danger, to give them some hope when they are lost in the darkness. All at once, as soon as I recreated this manifestation, this homage to a lighthouse, I felt Thelrios turn his attention to me, even here in the Shadowfell where I felt abandoned for years. What felt like years. Once his attention was on me, I simply spoke out in earnest. I've never been a religious man. I never studied the ways to interact with gods. I felt humbled. I felt stupid. I felt ignorant. But I spoke to him as one would speak to a teacher. And I just asked in earnest, please return the charges to this wand. And it seemed he heard my prayer. For at once I felt the wand replenish its power. And with the wand's replenishing of power, I felt hope again. I clung tightly to that wand for the next several months, as I continued to work on a way out of this desolate place. The chapter goes on, and it basically reaffirms that one thing you have to do in mechanical terms is you have to emulate a lighthouse in some way. If you can do something in this world to emulate a lighthouse and then speak out once you have Thelrios' attention, lighthouses being one of Thelrios' places of worship. Once you have Thelrios' attention through an emulation of his place of worship, or even just going to a lighthouse or something as well can work, then you can ask him, you can plead with him for the return of your goods, and you can do so, because there is no dawn, you can do so as often as you want. However, the thing to keep in mind, the thing that I'm going to do to keep this from getting overpowered every time you use your lucky horseshoe, you just ask him to replenish it. The thing to do, to keep in mind, is that I'm going to set a DC for a religion check, essentially, where we're talking in mechanical game mechanics terms now. If you can get Thelrios' attention, you make a religion check, and the DC for that religion check is related to how recently you have received his replenishment of your daily goods, essentially. I'm not going to tell you what that DC is or what the calculation is, but I've got it all behind the scenes, and if you so you can do it, you can use it, and then if you want to, you can attempt it again within an hour, within 2 hours, and you don't have to wait the 24 hours to get it back again. It's just that I'm going to tell you now, it's very unlikely to return until about half a day to a day, maybe a day and a half. So you might not get it every day. You'll get it when you succeed on a religion check. Sound good? All right. So what you do now, I'm going to make the decision for Apis because it makes sense that you would do so immediately because you've been desperate for this lucky horseshoe to return. Is as soon as you've learned that, you sort of bookmark the page you were on and you close the book. You rummage in your belongings and get the lucky horseshoe out, and you place it down on top of the pile of books that you've got to read. You get out your daily dice, your little wooden box of bone dice that can once per day give you a truthful answer to a yes/no question that you ask them. You get those out. Is there any other once per day abilities? I don't think there is any once per day things that you've got, do you? How are you going to do this, Apis Hive? How are you going to get Thelrios' attention? Put the panpipes in the pile just in case. Yeah, just grab the panpipes out, put those down in the pile as well. Just be like, maybe they're terrible because they don't recharge. Maybe there's a charge in them that makes them once per day I can actually get a good note out of them. Awesome storytelling as always. Thank you. I just made it up on the spot. I knew the content of what it would say, but I hadn't written it. Are there any candles in the library? You look around. You ask for a candle. Easy enough, even if there isn't one. I think there would be. There wouldn't be open flames in this library for obvious reasons, but they've got closed lanterns. You ask, could I get a candle? And they say, we don't like open flames in the library, but we have a lantern. And a fairy comes and brings over a little hooded lantern for you. You could find a candle if you want, or you can use the hooded lantern. What do you want to do? Find some sunlight, feel the warmth as we are Horay, I don't know what that is. You can easily find some sunlight. You can go outside. Here in the Merry Gentleman's home, the part of the Feywild that you're on, by the way, guys, a little preview of something that I'm working on at the moment. I got a little plastic ball from a bauble recently, and I drew my home planet of Rin onto it, and now I'm colouring it in so that I've got an actual physical, tangible globe that I can reference of the planet. And here are the part of the Feywild that you're on is in the dawn side of things. The sun is permanently in the east, about a couple inches from the horizon, so probably a couple hours, an hour after dawn or so. What do we want to do? Lantern? Do we want to go outside? Do we want to find a candle so that we're using like firelight? The lantern is more like a lighthouse, high-tech says. I think trial and error, try and emulate the book's method first, and if that fails, experiment, alter, see how much the method changes for different planes. Could do. The lantern. Lantern. Alright, most people saying we'll just use this hooded lantern. So we've got the lantern, we choose to put the hood down. It's one of those, I don't know the different types of lantern, but I think the hooded lantern is the one that is basically like just a glass container with the oil flame inside, and then it's got like an opaque metal hood that you can put down over it to block it, or put up again to unblock it to let it out. But I think the hooded lantern is the one that goes in all directions. If you wanted more of a lighthouse, then you're wanting more of a bullseye lantern, I think they're called, where there's only like a hole on one side of it, so all the light spills out in one direction. Alright, so how are we going to do it? We hold the lantern over our head, and we spin slowly in a circle while praying. Alright, let's see how well you do with that. I'm going to roll just a percentile check to see how good of a lighthouse you can emulate with your holding it above your head and spinning in a circle. That is okay. You did an alright job. I'll say then you sort of hold it above your head, but you hold it in such a way that your arms are down on one side of it, blocking some of the light on this side, meaning that most of the light's going that way, and there's a bit of a shadow behind you, perhaps. And then you hold the lantern up just kind of here, and you just kind of spin around lighthouse style, and you're spinning around, and you're thinking to Thelros, and the fairies are definitely looking at you and giggling because they're not sure what you're doing. But you do a good enough job that you start to sense like you're being watched. You have the unshakable feeling that you're being watched. So as you spin, as you feel like you're being watched, you start to pray. You start to pray to Thelrios. What is it that you're saying to Thelrios in your prayers, everybody? This must be looking so stupid right now. Hey, but if it works, it's worth it. Please let dawn's light shine upon me, you say. I will roll you a religion check, and we will see whether Thelrios decides to return your belongings to you for the day. That is a 12. You are not proficient in religion, but you are relatively intelligent with your +3. So that takes it to a 15. Mighty Thelrios, shine your light upon me. Accept this offering and help me recharge my items, that I may take your light into the Feywild. You look down after having done so, and the items in front of you don't seem any different, not to appearance anyway. So you continue. In our time of darkness and unknowing, please look upon our items with gentle light, so that we might have clarity and light again. And again, the items don't look different. You feel a little disheartened, so you reach down and grab them, and as your fingers touch the box and clasp around the horseshoe, you feel that there is power within them. Although they don't look different, it seems like it worked. It seems like this first attempt at getting Thelrios' attention here in the Feywild and asking him for aid has paid off. You get your dice back, and you get your lucky horseshoe back. Congratulations. Give the fairies a little wink and a smile, and stop spinning and do a little jump. Yatta! What do you want to do, Apis? You've got several other books to read. You've got your Lucky Horseshoe and your dice back. If you want to ask the dice a question, you can do so. For those who are a little bit new to the game and don't necessarily know the dice are right there in the middle of the inventory below me here, bone dice. They come in a little wooden box that's very well made. The wooden box says in Sylvan the name Bobby. And Bobby is the name of a creature from the Feywild that Apis has affectionately termed the Little Shit, because he is a mischievous little prankster and a bit of an asshole. He seems to work for the Merry Gentleman. He is a little rotund, kind of like a cherub-looking guy. He can fly unaided, it seems, without wings, and he can float, and he's kind of like, think Cheshire Cat meets cherub, and then make them a fairy. He's kind of like that. He's the one who gave you these dice. He also owned the dice at one point. And they were his dice, but now they belong to you for fairy reasons, and they once per day can give you a divinatory answer to something. That means that if you ask them a question that is a yes/no answer, and then you roll the dice, then they will once per day give you a truthful answer to that yes/no question. If you ask them a second question in that same day, or well, I say day, but until they're recharged. If you ask them a second question, then they'll still likely give you a truthful answer, but there's a chance that they'll give you a randomized answer. Apis has not done enough tests to work out what the percentage chance of the randomized answer is, so they don't know how likely they are to be trusted, and for that reason, Apis has never really asked them a second question in a day, because they're just like, I don't know if it's a random answer. There's no point, and they've never bothered to test it or work it out. So you have your dice back if you wanted to ask them any question at all. I think we should get the Merry Gentleman's view on the dice before we use them again. Yeah, if you want to. Is the name of the box still Bobby? Yes, it is. It's still Bobby. You might want to check on people. True, you might want to use the dice to check on people to see if anybody at home is still okay, because you've been away from the material plane for a little while now. The books we've got to look at can't leave the library, and we probably don't want to be using the dice in front of the other beings either. Read the sus shelf titles. Sus about those dice. Not sure we should use them unless they're vital. Why check on the sus titles? We can't do anything with the knowledge of those books anyway. Let's do a bunch of reading. Alright, so let's say there's a couple of people wanting to do a few different things, so I'm going to put it to a poll. Do you want to go back to reading? Do you want to check the titles of the Forbidden Shelf? For those who weren't here last time, there was a shelf in this library. The librarians, the fairies in the library, said you can read whatever you want, just not those ones. There's a bookshelf of round about 20 books. Most of which don't have titles on them, obviously, but about half of them do. And those are the Merry Gentleman's most interested books. Apparently, it's the one that it's his active reading bookshelf essentially. And he said nobody's allowed to touch these books till I'm done with them. All right, with 77% of people with 77% of Apis's synapses wanting to continue reading, that is what we shall do. The next poll is going to be then, what do we want to read about? Horizon Walkers? Maps? Portals? Or Therianthropy? Were curses? What do we want to read about? What to read? Therianthropy. The map book. Read about portals. I'll read about Horizon Walkers. Quickly write a book about how the Merry Gentleman should help Apis in all possible ways with no strings attached and put it on the Forbidden Shelf. Alright, with 58% of Apis wanting to read about Horizon Walkers, you grab from the pile one of the two Horizon Walker books. You have two options. You have a book called Crossing the Horizon by Llynedd Fonya. You look at the little blurb on the back of it, or maybe you read a couple of pages over the front of it, and you learn that this is a thesis. It's a quite dry piece, and it's going to be a relatively difficult read because it's going to get into details and depth of an academic study that, if you're not proficient, already studied in that stuff, and even if you are, don't know if however many of my audience have been through university and knows how difficult it is to read things of an academic nature, even if you're interested in the subject. But it's a little bit dry. So it's a thesis from a university PhD student, essentially, or the high fantasy equivalent. And it makes some hypotheses connecting observed abilities from different Horizon Walkers. It tries to argue that all people can become Horizon Walkers given enough training, and it doesn't need to be as rare and naturally born and inherent in somebody as people think. So Crossing the Horizon, it's a PhD study of like how to become a Horizon Walker, and it's all theoretical, it seems. So there's that one, or there's another one called Family Traits: A Guide to Identifying Rare Abilities in Childhood. And this is seemingly, as you look through the blurb of it and such, is a book on child development, like that which parents read to try and raise high performers. It seems like the book is not specifically about Horizon Walkers, but as you flick through it, you might be able to find a chapter in there of Horizon Walkers' abilities. It has chapters that cover a variety of magical schools and abilities and traits that occur in mutations and such, one of which is specific to Horizon Walkers. So those are your two options. Which one would you like to read? Crossing the Horizon, a university thesis, or Family Traits: A Guide to Identifying Rare Abilities in Childhood? Crossing the Horizon, Family Traits, Crossing the Horizon, Family Traits. Go for the thesis, go for the second one. Ooh, definitely not consensus on this one. So let's put it to a poll. The first option seems more worthwhile, even if they were wrong about everyone being able to become it. It'd still be properly researched. Second one, the first one feels like it's trying to make their own ideas fit into the category instead of studying the actual subject matter. That's the fun of this as well, is that I am not necessarily like there's the phenomenon of an unreliable narrator. You're not getting information directly from the GM here. I'm not telling you information about Horizon Walkers. It might feel like that, especially because if an NPC tells you something or you're reading it from a book, it might feel like, oh, well, Rob's told us that this is how it works. You've got to remember, Rob has not told you this is how it works. Whoever wrote the book, Hyleth Fonya, has written the book, and so she is telling you how she thinks Horizon Walkers work. So I have taken that into account when I'm going to be telling you what information is in these books. It might well be stuff that has been very well researched, and so I will tell you the information as that character has gotten it, which might be true, but there might be elements of bias in there. 60% of you, not a overwhelming majority, but a majority nonetheless, 60% of you decide you're going to read Family Traits, or you're going to at the very least start with Family Traits: A Guide to Identifying Rare Abilities in Childhood. The book on Family Traits, I'm going to roll just an intelligence check to see if, sort of like a memory check, to see if Apis remembers where in the room this book came from. It's only been a few minutes since it was grabbed, so the DC is not that high. But let's roll you an intelligence check with a +3. 12 again. 12 plus 3, 15. All right. So with a 15, you remember that the Family Traits book came from the high-end side of the importance room. For those who weren't here last week, the Merry Gentleman organizes his library not with the Dewey Decimal System, or with alphabetical order, or even size order of the books. He organizes it by importance to him. Somewhat arbitrary, and he's constantly getting his fairies to rearrange the books and where they're on the shelves. But he thinks that the Family Traits book is on the higher end of importance. And the Crossing the Horizons one with a 15, I'll say you also remember that one came from somewhere in the middle range of what the Merry Gentleman believes is important. So, Apis picks up Family Traits: A Guide to Identifying Rare Abilities in Childhood, and starts to flick through them. I'm going to ask you yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you want to take 20 on this? Because time might not feel like it has any reason to not, but I am keeping track of how long things are taking in the Feywild, for reasons that you may not have any idea about yet. All right, the majority of people wanting yes, we're going to take 20 on this. So you read it a little bit more carefully, still skimming, still just like getting like a couple of pages into each chapter, but realizing this particular chapter is not about anything relevant, so skipping on. You therefore get a slightly better overview of the whole book. So I'll say that you first come across chapters. The first couple of chapters are not about specific traits anyway. It's more about how this book is going to work and how to best read it. That it's not meant to be read cover to cover. It's meant to be read as a reference book and skip to the chapter that you're interested in. Blah blah blah. You get a chapter on. Let's see, what would there be? Incidentally, there is something on therianthropy that you flick past and you go, oh, twofer here. I've got a therianthropy book. And you read that chapter a little bit more heavily, but it doesn't really go into too much depth. It does not mention anything about cures. It doesn't say... it doesn't go into a great deal of depth about the different curses, because this is a book that's about like lots of different traits that can be born with, that make you a little bit out of the ordinary for regular folk, as it were. It doesn't go into a great deal of depth on any one of them. Therianthropy, as you flick through it, you learn that there are as many different therianthropy curses as there are animals. You can become a werewolf just as much as you can become a werewolm. You can become a werehawk or a wereflea or a weretiger. It even references a couple of animals that you've never even heard of. A were-armadillo. And you're like, what's an armadillo? It then says in this book that, in this chapter, that, however, although there are as many were animals as there are animals, some of those animal forms lend themselves more naturally to the propagation of the curse. It says that while some folk are born with it, it is a family trait, others can be passed this curse, like an infection. Any open wounds or transmission of any sort of bodily fluids can pass the curse from one to another. It doesn't always. It's not a guarantee. Sometimes the body of the victim, as it were, the person who is going to become this, sometimes the body of that person can fight off the curse before it takes hold. But if you are a were-tiger, you're more likely to be able to scratch and bite and claw and pass on your body fluids to that person and infect them than if you're a were-worm. You're not likely to be able to bite them or claw them, and so your curse is not likely to be passed on by anything other than reproduction. And so some of those were curses all but die out, essentially. After you've read that about it, it says, ultimately, there are many ways to combat the were curse, blah, blah, blah. You can either live with it or you can try and fight it, but it can be dangerous with the moon, blah, blah, blah. And you realise it's telling you nothing about how to cure it or like anything like that. So you move on. You get to a chapter on a wild magic. Some folk can be born with a wild magic, and you start to read about essentially the wild magic sorcerers and how they are born with this inherent ability to manipulate the weave without having to study it, and yet it can be very dangerous because it boils up inside them like a well, like a spring that needs to be let out at different times. You flick on from that chapter, you get to a chapter that talks about what are they called? Tieflings. You get to a chapter that talks about tieflings, and it says that unfortunately, as can be very dangerous, very upsetting to some very excited new parents expecting their first newborn, when one can be born with purple or red or blue coloured skin and the nubbins of horns that will very quickly develop into larger horns and tail, and this can be very distressing, and you can worry that it's a monster. However, tieflings are a product of some devilish or demonic influence in your past, but it does not necessarily mean that the creature, the new creature, keeps calling the tieflings a creature, which is maybe a little disrespectful, but that's how the author's written it. The tiefling creature can still have a life of not being influenced by evil themselves. It's just that society tends to treat them that way, and blah blah blah. So you find that interesting, but you skip on. What else would there be? Some other family traits that in D&D can be born with. There's a Fey. Yeah, Fey touched would probably be one of them. I saw that in the chat. Somebody asked about Fey touched. I think that would be one of the things. They say in this next chapter, leading on from the tiefling one, they're like, similarly, people that have ancestry touched by Fey influence, perhaps they had one of their great grandparents had an encounter with an archfey. It says in very Victorian euphemistic terms, they had an encounter with an archfey. They got to know an archfey or something. Maybe something like that, or a fairy got involved in their production. Blah blah blah. They can sometimes be born with a more prankstery kind of a nature, not necessarily malicious, but they can be born with this mercurial predilection's not the right word. It's right there. It's on my tongue. It's like it's a word to describe something being like fey-like, in that it's kind of like more whimsical and harder to predict, unpredictable. Mercurial's definitely a word for it, but there's another word that definitely ends in precocious. No, precarious. Capricious. Is that the word? Capricious. What does capricious mean? I think that might be the word I'm looking for, right? Capricious. Capricious definitely seems like the word I was looking for, even if that's not the word, even if that's not the correct word. I think that is what I was looking for. Fanciful, capricious. Yes, Wraith. Wraith gets the points. This chapter talks about how it's these people are often referred to as Fey touched, and they can live a life that's very human, or very. It refers to them as being human, but it says that they're very human in all other temperaments, but they can be quite capricious. They can be fanciful, volatile, temperamental. They can also have a little bit of touch of magic. So usually, when when these particular Fey touch children are babies, they will be found outside of their cots, even though they can not possibly have gotten to those locations. And this will manifest in other ways of the child getting onto the tops of roofs when they shouldn't be able to, and getting into areas they shouldn't belong, until eventually it is discovered that they are stepping through the Feywild temporarily in a process that many have started to refer to as a misty step, because they're often surrounded by a silvery mist as they do so. Anyway, you move on from that chapter. I'm going to cut to the chase. There's a couple more chapters of similar sorts of things, of like traits of humankind. So you eventually get to one that says, the plains steppers. And it says, particularly rare are the plains steppers. Some folk that are born with the ability to manipulate the planar magics in such a way that they can travel between planes without having portals. Now let's just double check the blurb of this book to see what sort of child development. This chapter on Horizon Walker says that while some believe this is a process that can be taught through training, others believe that it is the training simply hones a skill that is already given to them by nature of their birth. Unfortunately, with how rare this is, it is yet to be studied to a satisfactory level. Incidentally, with you taking 20, you also notice that there is a footnote that is relatively easy to miss, that says, if anyone should happen to have information on this, like there's a little asterisk footnote after it says this is relatively not well studied. It says if anybody should have information on these and should wish to get in touch, I'm very open to furthering my studies, essentially. So potentially, if you potentially, Wraith, if you want to volunteer for an academic study, someone might be able to pay you, or at the very least buy you dinner or whatever, to talk to you about being a Horizon Walker. You continue on down the chapter, and it says that the types of study that are often done with Horizon Walkers is that of an academic nature of the planes themselves, knowing what planes exist and the organization of the planar cosmos, as it calls it, the cosmological wheel, as they call it. Knowing what planes exist and the cosmological wheel can lead to these these planar steppers to know what to encounter when they can come across portals. It is of great importance and great safety that these planar steppers can ascertain where a portal leads before entering one, for it can lead to great dangerous planes, such as the plane of fire or the plane of acid. One would not want to accidentally lead themselves there without being prepared for it, it says. Could we take notes of contact details for the study in case we get time? Never. We certainly can, yes. Who is the author of this one? I never actually wrote the author for this one, so I'm going to say this is by... Oh, I get to use my fun, exciting dice. Where are they? This is how I'm gonna name the author. I've got some fun dice here that have letters of the alphabet on them in different amounts. This dice is a D26, I think, and has all letters on it once, whereas these ones I think are D60s, so they're more mathematically based because you can actually divide a sphere into 60 equal faces. It's not exactly a fair dice per se, but actually a D60 is, I think. Anyway, this is a slightly better dice, and it's got the letters on them in different amounts, so the E is more likely to show up than the Q, for instance. So I'm gonna roll these, and I'm gonna make a name from the letter dice because that's fun. All right, so we've got an A, an H, an A, and a J. So we could call them Ahaj, or we could call them Jaha. Jaha. I like Jaha actually. Jaha, which indicates that they might come from Radi Soab, perhaps. All right. Now we've got a T-I-N-U. Tinu. Jaha Tinu. Jaha Tinu. That's what I'm going to call them. So you flick to the, you keep your finger in the page, flick to the front, nothing there. You flick to the back, and it has author information. And it says, if you should like to get in touch about any corrections you wish to offer about this book, I'm willing to listen. I can even pay you for your time if the information becomes worthy of including in the next edition of this book. The author is Jahatinu, and she lives in what's one of this? She lives in Al Yamo on the island on the continent of Radi Soab. You take note of that. You take note of the name. The date of publication, I'll say, was let's say D20 years ago. Let's say only 2 years ago. So 3991. 3991, 2 years ago. It's a relatively recent edition, this one. Back to the chapter, you continue reading. There's a little quest marker comes up and just adds to the quest book. Visit Jahatinu. Talk to her about Horizon Walkers. Let's see what information. I want to cut to the chase with this one. What information did you want to get from this particular book? The information that you gather from this book is that the things that are going to be useful for you to do in your downtime going forwards is to learn more about the planes of existence. Because as your training increases, as your abilities with this Horizon Walker functions, these features that you get, as they increase, you're going to be more and more likely to encounter portals of different places and go through them and find yourself on planes other than the material plane. And the more you do that, the more danger you're going to put yourself in if you don't know how those planes interact. So basically, this the takeaway from this particular book is learn more about the planes, learn more about religion, learn more about arcana, and you'll be more likely to survive. We must know the portals, the cosmological wheel, etc. Yes, exactly. Wouldn't want to get stuck in the abyss, for example. No, and you wouldn't want to go to the plane of fire, not realizing that that's the portal you're about to step through. Because, probably goes without saying, but you would not survive very long on the plane of fire. Not without fire resistance magic. Because if you step into the plane of fire, you will burn to death within minutes, if not seconds. Once we learn this, we should send and retrieve items into the portal first, the rope, for instance, like in the past, to see if they are burned or covered in acid. Yes, exactly that. The rest of the campaign's just reading all the books in this library. So that's that book done. You get to the end of that chapter. You've gotten all the information that you needed to out of that one. Who wants to move on from... let's put a thumbs up if you want to move on to one of the other books. Put a thumbs down if you now want to read the other Horizon Walker book. The one that's a thesis, a little bit more dry, but it might have more information than this one did. Thumbs up to move on to one of the other books. Thumbs down to read the other Horizon Walker book. Ooh, okay. That's not an obvious consensus here, so I'm going to put it to a poll. And because I'm putting it to a poll, I can add in other options as well, actually. Let's say what now? Let's go Horizon Walker Thesis. Horizon Walker Thesis. Map book. You've read the Sun book already, then that leaves the Portals and the Therianthropy. Portals, Therianthropy, and MG's personal shelf. Might get an impromptu short rest by reading the thesis. Might just conk out in the library. Yeah. Yeah, you start to read the thesis and you just... What now? What? Alright. Exactly 50% of the votes wanted to read the Horizon Walker Thesis book next. 33% wanted to read the Portals, and 10% or less wanted to read the other things. So we will go with the 50% Horizon Walker Thesis. Given that you're already thinking about the Horizon Walker abilities and your abilities, you decide to stay with the topic. You put that book to the side and you pick up Crossing the Horizon by Llyneth Fonya. A thesis from a university PhD student makes some hypotheses connecting observed abilities from different known Horizon Walkers. It tries to argue that all people can become Horizon Walkers given enough training. Now, with this one, because it's a very dry thesis kind of text, and I have personal experience with trying to read these things, I can tell you that taking 20 doesn't, it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to take 20 on this one. That's because there is, as I said before, taking 20 is only possible when there is no downside to failing the roll. With reading a thesis, there is a downside to failing the roll. If you roll poorly on the first roll, a first sort of concentration check essentially, then that is telling me something about the world. That is telling me that this thesis is a little too dry for you to concentrate on and to understand anything from it. So I'm going to roll you a concentration check, essentially. Instead of constitution, I'm going to make it intelligence, because I've always thought that intelligence makes more sense for concentration checks anyway, but I'm not getting into that right now. So I'm going to roll, I'm going to add 3, and we're going to see if you get anything out of this book. Hey, not bad, not bad. 10 plus 3 is 13. 13 is above average. So it is not easy to get all of the information from it. There is definitely information in this thesis that I'm going to withhold because you only got a 13. But you're going to give it your best shot, and you're definitely going to get some information from this. I will say, and this is not like a binding contract that I'm doing right now, but I will say if you put in the chat right now information that you're interested in knowing about Horizon Walkers, I will decide from that information what sort of... I might choose information that you actually want to know rather than me improvising stuff on the spot that none of you actually care about. Also, Batmerp suggests horseshoe. Thumbs up, thumbs down if you want to use the lucky horseshoe to re-roll that, because you might learn more information. If you roll higher than a 10, there's a 50-50 chance that you'll roll higher than the 10 with a lucky horseshoe. But then your lucky horseshoe probably doesn't come back until you successfully do your religion check again to get it to replenish. Most people say no. There are a couple of yeses. Accidental stepping and getting back home. That's an interesting topic. Yeah, accidental stepping, getting back home. No to the horseshoe. All right. We're not going to re-roll with the horseshoe because majority of people don't want to. Makes sense. Probably won't leave it for something. Probably won't need it for anything life-saving at the moment. We'll see. First bit of the paper should explain the conclusion. Does it sound like it'll have nuggets that we want? It definitely does, yes. So I'll read you the conclusion first. What planes exist, cosmological wheel, and how to plane a walk. How to plane a walk could be a very interesting read, yeah. Do Horizon Walker skills are they inherited from their parents? Okay, I can get to that one. Let's actually let me write some of these things down because that's going to be interesting for me to get to. What information do you guys want to learn? Accidental stepping. I'll start with the conclusion of the thesis. Accidental stepping, how to return, how to plane a walk, like how to step. The genetic role in Horizon Walker chance, so is it inherited / genetic? Any spells? Any related spells? How to plane a walk? List of Horizon Walker abilities. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Abilities. Can they share their powers? Shareable powers. Controlling the ability to step. Yeah, that's kind of goes in with the how to step, I think. Famous Horizon Walkers. So Famous Horizon Walkers is definitely something you can read about because that's in the blurb there. Talks about a study of I just wrote horizontal walkers. Horizontal walkers. How would that work? Use our abilities to travel within the plane we're on. Ooh, that's a good one. Stepping on same plane. Abilities in combat. Not super fussed on how we got it. We definitively have the powers. So information on what skills and abilities are there. Walking is usually horizontal, Rob. The motion is horizontal, but you are vertical when you walk. So I was thinking horizontal walking is like somebody who's lying down but somehow walking. Move like a worm, yeah, maybe. All right. So, and then finally we'll take Batmerp's famous acts of Horizon Walkers. So I'll put famous horizontal walkers and their stories, like things that they've done. All right. So starting with the conclusion of this book, this thesis. Some hypotheses connecting observed abilities from different known Horizon Walkers, arguing that people can become Horizon Walkers given enough training. The conclusion begins in that infuriating academic way of saying more study is needed. And you're like, okay, so it's not conclusive. They've not come to a conclusive decision about whether or not this is possible. But they've said more study is needed. But it is this author's opinion that the abilities of a Horizon Walker are not unique enough that they could not be learned in other means. The nature of their ability to teleport has been known by wizards for a great many years. Even the most powerful wizards can teleport without the need of teleportation circles. The abilities to step from one place to another on the same plane of existence has been known by those touched by the Fae for many years. Eladrins and elves can quite often step from one place to another. The abilities to manipulate their attacks to more efficiently incapacitate their foes have been features of a great many hunters and warriors throughout the years, uncountably many. It is not of this author's opinion that the Horizon Walkers are unique enough that they would constitute a purely genetic or random chance mutation, and that given enough time and study of the proper varieties, anyone would be able to, if not become a Horizon Walker, at least emulate all of the abilities of one. Crappy conclusion, funding denied. Yeah. That is not to say, it goes on to say in the conclusion, that is not to undermine the incredible work of the Horizon Walkers in this study. And so from that you learn, of course, they're going to start talking about Horizon Walkers and the things that they've done. All right, so I'm going to go down the list. You got a 13, so I'm going to choose some of these things that I think you would find more interesting. I'm going to start with, is it inherited or genetic? There is a section of this thesis that definitely talks about the hypothesized origins of a Horizon Walker. And she, in her study, she presents a bunch of graphs and a bunch of charts and data in a very kind of dry way. But the graphs are interesting, as graphs are always interesting, right, Fancy? The graphs are interesting, and it shows a correlation between those who have shown Horizon Walker abilities and those who are touched by other planes when they are born. Usually, those who have a Fey ancestry but are born on the material plane are slightly more likely to be Horizon Walkers. Those who have a genie in their background, so those with Ganassi sort of heritage, are slightly more likely to be Horizon Walkers. Those who have been touched by angels or devils, such as Asima and Tieflings, often slightly more likely to be Horizon Walkers. So she concludes, and from your understanding of this, your sort of layman understanding of this data, she does a pretty good job of convincing you that it does seem to have a genetic and inherited influence. It is not inherited in the sense that one of your parents is a Horizon Walker, that means you are. But it does mean that if you're a Horizon Walker, there's a good chance that someone in your ancestry has a connection to another plane, a pretty strong connection to another plane. And the further back that is, the weaker the possibility. So, like, people who are Fey-touched, their children have a decent chance of being Horizon Walker. Not decent in the sense of, like, 50-50 or anything close to that. But there is a statistically significant increase, which might mean, like, instead of a 0.1%, it's a 1% chance. She still concludes that Horizon Walkers in general are extremely rare. So, is it inherited genetic? You have gotten your answer. Yes, it seems to be a component of that. Let's see. Let's go down to. She talks about spells. She talks about spells in this thesis about the spells that can emulate that of a Horizon Walker's ability. I'm not going to waste too much time on this because I'm just going to be ramping around the mechanics of the class. All of those class feature spells that you get as a Horizon Walker. Let me open up Horizon Walker. Horizon Walker spells. Blah, 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 blah. She talks about how Horizon Walkers, given that they are inherently protectors of the planes, that's usually the role that they fall into, and it is theorized, she hypothesizes as well. She goes with the leading theory that Horizon Walkers' existence comes from the gods' need to put in some... when the gods realized that when they tried to separate all of the planes off and keep them separated, the planes have a tendency to not want to be separated, and they come back together again. And so something needs to be in place to keep them separated. And while the gods can do that, there's like little things. There's like little leaks, springing leaks that you don't want to get a plumber or a builder around for a tiny little leak. You want to have someone that's capable of dealing with it themselves. And it's theorized that Horizon Walkers are such a person that the gods created. They were like, every so often a portal will open up that we don't intend to be there. We don't want people to access this plane from that plane, so it's weird that there's a portal there, but it's not worth my attention as a god to deal with it. So they just chuck in once every few generations. They'll be like, here, there's a Horizon Walker. They can deal with it. They can learn how to manipulate those things. That's the leading theory as to why Horizon Walkers exist in the first place. And as such, because of that, they have natural magics that protect them from evil and good, from those different influences of planes. The protection from evil and good comes from that. The ability to step between one place and another, like the Fey creatures, the Misty Step. They talk about the ability to use that fundamental building block magic that is force magic. They use that in ways to manipulate and enhance themselves, to move faster when they need to get away from dangers of other planes, such so that they can cast haste eventually, or they can. She talks about it as being they can replicate an ability that is like a wizard casting haste. Eventually, they get powerful enough that they can use their magic to emulate a similar thing that wizards can do when they try to banish a creature, and they can cast banishment. And then eventually, they have the ability to teleport between teleportation circles, knowing portals well enough that they learn how to use that same magic as a wizard would. So those are the spells that you get as a Horizon Walker, and that's what she includes in the study as well, saying like that's where those things come from. We wouldn't have lost our memory if we were part Fey. That is true. Well, you would if you were only part Fey, then you might have got advantage on the roll. Depending on how much Fey is in your blood, I would have given you an advantage on the memory roll when you left the Feywild, but I did not. Rewind that part again. Why is the other gods are all up in our biz? Is that why the other gods are all up in our biz? Maybe. I'll say, Kindy, that yes, that is something that Apis might come to the conclusion of, having read that part of the thesis. That's the leading theory as to why Horizon Walkers exist. Having started showing and demonstrating at age 54, well, started at 53. After having started to demonstrate your abilities as a Horizon Walker, the gods are now starting to take interest in you as being like, oh, there's one. There's one of those things that we created for dealing with our planar problems. We did some costume design, and then there's like a thread that's dangling, and we've got that person over there that can come and clip that thread or tuck that in or stitch up that thing that started to come loose. That's basically your job as a Horizon Walker. They've done the planar cosmology thing as gods, and then it's your job to be like, hey, there's a leak over here. I'm going to patch this one over here, and there's a creature over here that belongs over there. I'm going to send that back. It's a god's level. Where's Waldo? Yeah. All right. So with the 13, you got your inherited genetics information. You got spells information. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 things left. I'm going to roll a d6. No, I'm going to roll a d4 to see how many of these remaining 6 items that you can get before you get too tired from this piece of very dry text. Luckily for you, I rolled a 4, so you're going to get 4 of the remaining 6 things on this list: accidental stepping, how to step, abilities and abilities in combat, whether the powers are shareable, famous Horizon Walkers and their stories, and whether or not you can step from one part of the plane to another part of the plane. So I will go with... I do want to give you the information on famous Horizon Walkers, so I'll just give you that one and then I'll roll for the others. You continue this thesis. By the way, this is taking you quite some time to read this thing because it's a big, thick piece, and there's all sorts of things that you're not understanding from it. You keep having to take breaks and wander around the library, have a bit of a stretch out the back. Go back to it. Okay, let's see if I can learn more about this thing. You learn about... now, where did I write the famous Horizon Walkers before? Control, find, Duncan, somewhere in this... Here we are. You learn about 3 famous Horizon Walkers from your from your relatively recent past. Umar Rashid, a Horizon Walker born and raised in Al Yamo, second influence of Al Yamo in the last 2 books that you've read. He was born and raised approximately 3,748 AQ, which would have put him about 250 years ago, give or take. It does go into more information about Umar, which I will in a second. You learn about a gentleman called Duncan, who started an organization called Horizon Shine in a country, the continent of Kyanua. And he lived and worked about 3,966 AQ. So that's only 30-some years ago, 27 years ago. So with that catches your attention as Apis, and you realise, oh shit, there's a good chance Duncan's still alive. And then you learn about a third Horizon Walker called Ebony Nightwing. Ebony Nightwing is a Dragonborn and lived in Peor. Peor is the continent that you're on, but they lived on the I didn't actually decide on the country they're in. I think they live in. I'm going to roll for it. No, actually, I'm going to think. Where would it make most sense for them to be? In Gaul. They lived in Gaul, which is the country. Ebony Nightwing is a Dragonborn and lived in the country of Gaul on the continent of Peor, which is what the continent you're on. And Gaul is the next island, the first landmass on the continent from where you are now. If you set off from the island that you're on, and head east, you'll hit Gaul. And they lived in approximately 3,861 AQ, so about 130 years ago. You're not 100% sure or familiar with Dragonborn, so you don't know how long they live, but dragons do live a long time, so maybe Ebony is also still alive. It's basically France. Yes, it is. Gaul is the equivalent of France in my world. Yeah. And it is, and Gaul has a high elven population and has a huge sylvan population too. It has quite a strong connection to the Feywild. Gaul, lots of magical enchanted forests and things. Presumably, we're taking notes of these names and locations of fellow Horizon Walkers. Yes, as with everything so far with Apis, you are taking your books, your own personal books, and you're taking the ink and quill that you were presented, and you're taking notes in the margins as much as you can. You have to be very succinct with your notes in the margins, because you are only writing in the margins. So you probably get some paper and write on it and put it into the front covers of your books and stuff as well. So you've got more places to write, but then it's loose paper that's likely to get lost when you aren't being very careful with the books. Umar, direct opposite of our continent on Rin, is there like a planar magnetic poles? Well, I will show you on my little globe that I've made. I can work out where we are. Apis would be here. Nightwing, Ebony Nightwing would be here. So right next to each other on this globe scale. Umar would be here, all the way around the globe, or if you want to go the other way, across the Frintek Ocean. There's very few people can travel the Frintek Ocean. That's actually the travelling of the Frintek Ocean is the subject of one of my home games. One of the characters' main quests. Where is he? Yeah, this guy. This guy's family is the only family in the world to successfully ever traverse the Frintek Ocean, and so they're very wealthy merchants because they can go from Radisoab, which is the equivalent of Middle East, back to this continent, which is the equivalent of Europe. And so he does that trip and brings a bunch of spices and materials and things. But it's a very dangerous journey for anybody but his family, it seems. So you could go that way to get to Umar, but it's very dangerous. You could go the long way around across the continents and things and get there. Or you can teleport when you can get teleportation. And then finally Duncan. So that's you, that's Umar, and Duncan is around here. Duncan is pretty much, not quite exactly opposite, but almost the opposite side of the world. What is Umar? Umar is a person. He is one of the other Horizon Walkers. He was a human from memory. And he worked in. We played as Umar. For those who don't know the relevance of these creatures, these people, Umar is a character that we played as in a one-shot game link for Umar. If you want to see the game that we played as Umar, and you can see some of their high-level Horizon Walker abilities, there it is. Duncan we have also seen. Duncan I played as in a 12-hour game marathon with my friends Dreader GM and Dead Aussie Gamer for the Jasper's Game Day charity event. I played as Duncan. The high-level Horizon Walker, who is the leader of the organisation Horizon Shine. As for Ebony Nightwing, we have not yet seen Ebony in action in any of the games, but maybe one day. All right. So that's enough of an aside. You learned that Umar Rashid lived about 250 years ago, and he was a human in Radisoab. Probably is dead by now. The thesis does not. It does go into the biology of Horizon Walkers and says that, as far as studies have yet shown, they don't live any longer than the other people of their kind. So the influences of the plane don't seem to shorten or lengthen their life expectancy. So as such, Umar's probably dead. Ebony Nightwing lived about 120 some years ago, 130 years ago. And so Ebony might be still alive, depending on how long Dragonborns live. And Duncan lived only about 30 years ago, 20 some years ago. The date that it gives is very unclear as to whether it's their birth date or whether it's like the date of when they did their most notable achievement or anything. It doesn't really go into. It's not a biography of these individual people. It just kind of tells you Duncan, who lives in this blah blah blah, and lived around this time. All right, so Horizon Walk, famous horizontal walkers and their stories. It tells you a little bit about their stories. Okay, so without spoiling the things that I've just talked about, where you can see those other people in action. So Umar's story, it talks about how they single-handedly brought down a well, they didn't bring them down because they're still active, but they single-handedly caused a great deal of strife for one of the crime organizations in Al Yamo. Using their Horizon Walker abilities, they prevented them from growing in too much power back in their day. Duncan, it talks about how Duncan, it is said, saved the world entirely by using their abilities to step to other planes, to move to another universe, and prevent or work to prevent the coming of a second Tarask. The Tarask being a very well-known monster that is mythological in Godzilla in size and is a world destroyer essentially. There you go then. Ebony Nightwing, it talks about some of the things that they did. Ebony was involved in the prevention of the underworld planes, the lower planes, the hell planes, from having a foothold here in the world, and that's what they're most well known for. There was a long campaign with the devils, particularly, to frame the demons so that people would be looking elsewhere. They would frame the demons into looking like it was a demonic influence rather than a devilish influence. But it was Ebony Nightwing's work that uncovered the truth, the fact that it was actually the devilish influence from the Nine Hells rather than that of the Abyss, and and then worked to stop these devils from having an influence within the government of Gaul. The monarchy and the government of Gaul, and took that down from the inside, essentially. Looking at the stories specifically to see what they were capable of, and therefore what we should be able to learn at some point. Yep, So you learn that sort of stuff about like the fact that they eventually, once you're powerful enough as a Horizon Walker, if you keep training as a fighter and a Horizon Walker, you will learn powers that can like help stop world-ending threats and things. It does pay a small sort of lip service in the thesis to the fact that these Horizon Walkers, though they achieved great things, they didn't do so on their own. They didn't do so solo. They had help, as all adventurers do. Did that last story say anything about how to close portals? No, it's not. This is not a thesis about portals or closing portals. It's a thesis about Horizon Walkers and their abilities, and it said that Ebony Nightwing was able to do so, but it doesn't say anything about how. Alright, so we've got 3 more pieces of information on this list, and there's 5 more to choose from, so I'm going to roll a d10, halve it, and see which other pieces of information we learn next. 5 halved rounded is 3, is 1, 2, 3. Their abilities and their abilities in combat. Where is it? Horizon Walkers, there we are. What is your abilities in this class? You get magic, detect portal, planar warrior, ethereal step, distance strength, planar warrior, and spectral defense. Give me 1 second to just kind of think how this would be written in a thesis. What it tells you about their abilities and their abilities in combat, and I'm basically just riffing on what the characters' abilities are anyway. It says that each of them have some abilities in common. Such abilities include their ability to detect the closest disturbance of the different planes, the energies that keep one plane from another, and where those things are weaken, and therefore they can usually hone in on where those leaks are happening. They also manage to use that crackling of fundamental force energy to augment their attacks. They can step into the ethereal plane and back out again as easily as those of a ghost, and so they can cast cast themselves into the border ethereal plane, able to slip through walls, slip around corners without being seen. All sorts of abilities that allow them to take themselves into the ghost realm essentially and back into the material almost at will. It says they have the ability to use that ethereal step to jump between their current location and another location to strike from a more advantageous position. Most of these creatures that have been tasked with manipulating the planes and returning the planes to how they are meant to be, killing the denizens of the lower planes and the evil planes that would harm us. They usually, Horizon Walkers will usually train extensively in combat, and as such they can use their ethereal step to augment that combat and strike from behind. The other thing that they all have in common, it says, is the ability to use that almost at-will step into the ethereal plane to reduce the combat done to them in battle as well, the damage done to them in combat. It then, however, catches your eye by going on to describe things that aren't in the class list. It says, for many Horizon Walkers, it seems they develop unique abilities as well. Duncan, for instance, was always able to focus on the energies of a portal and be able to determine where it led without having stepped through it. This is not a feature that Ebony Nightwing or Umar had ever purported being able to do. Duncan was also able to develop the ability to transpose some of his portal magic onto scrolls for others to use, or for him to use at a later date. His ability to manipulate the planes had a more academic bent, and he was able to justify that down onto a scroll. Umar in his later years, was able to manipulate some of the energies from the planes that he could contact, such as taking fire from the fire plane and imbuing his attacks with those energies. In later years, he managed to manipulate the elemental planes almost at will to imbue his attacks with the energies he wished. Ebony Nightwing seemed to spend so much time manipulating and fighting the denizens of the lower planes that she developed resistance to their attacks and their charming abilities. Not only that, but she was able to in her later years, she was able to find ways to change her own appearance to look more like the enemies she was fighting, so that she could slip amongst them. These were unique traits to them, so it seems that Horizon Walkers will adapt over time to abilities that they need. What that means for you, as Apis finds out in this, is that since the beginning, Robert, I, have had in mind that there are abilities with planar that Horizon Walking that the game doesn't give you, but I want to. I have intention that you will get the level up things that you are destined to get in the class, but at certain levels you will also get other features too. You will get the ability to do more than the class should be able to do. So look forward to that. What those things are, I have in mind, but I'm willing to change them based on how the story goes as well. The things that you need for the story to progress, especially because you're a... basically I've had this in mind because you're a level 1... you're a solo campaign, you're a one-person party. So I've had this in mind because you're a solo one-person party, and so I wanted to give you extra features that related to you being a Horizon Walker and having portal teleportation magics and things as well. So you have more coming than you can expect to get. You'll get other bonuses as you level up. What those bonuses will be, as I say, I've got in mind certain things that I'm going to give you, but I'm going to... Each level I'm going to see like what direction you've headed in as a Horizon Walker. For the last 2 levels you've been leveling up as a fighter, so you haven't had any indication that you're getting these things. But if you look at some of the features that you've gotten already from the first 5 levels of Horizon Walker, you'll see that some of those things aren't rules as written, because I've tweaked them and adapted them and changed them towards Apis specific. The Wayfinder Beetle is one example of that, by the way. The Wayfinder Beetle is, I've mentioned before, less of an item and more of an extension of your abilities as a planar warrior, a Horizon Walker. So the Wayfinder Beetle is such an example of a bonus to your character abilities. Cool, so that's one thing you learn, abilities and abilities in combat. Let's go with 1, 2, 3, 4. There's D4. The dice as well. The dice are another example of something that I gave you at a level up that you weren't meant to get, but they are pretty much an extension of your abilities to ask the... Yeah, it's an extension of your abilities with your connection to the Feywild specifically, to ask questions of a powerful Fey, whoever made these dice. You can ask questions of them and they'll help you along the way. That's another extension of your abilities as Horizon Walker. We already have a boosted Hunter's Mark, is that part of it? That actually isn't a part of what I had planned for boosting your abilities. That came from you doing something badass and dope. Oh, that came from your Sasquatch thing, as far as I remember. You amazed me with the Sasquatch abilities, getting that back into a pit, and so you got a boosted Hunter's Mark because of it. I'd love to be able to traverse a plane we're in without arms or taking forever to travel. Yeah. That's embarrassing. I think you meant horizontal walk. Alright, D4, let's see what other information you get from this book. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stepping on the same plane of existence. Here you go, Wraith. Ask and you shall receive. This is more information you get from the thesis. I've got to keep in mind you only rolled a 13 on your information check, though. I'm giving you probably a little more information than I should have, really. Stepping on the same plane of existence. All that you get from this is that it's not in one particular place in the thesis. It's like there's sections about there's like paragraphs here and there that talk about this ability. For instance, in the section you've already read about spells and how some Horizon Walker abilities can be emulated by wizard spells. Teleportation Circle is a spell that exists and has existed for eons, and Horizon Walkers are able to access the magics of teleportation circles without books and all of the shit that wizards need for that. You can, with Teleportation Circle, step on the same plane of existence to another place where there is a teleportation circle. It also says that Ebony Nightwing and Duncan were both able to step without the need of a circle. By later in their career, it says. It doesn't say any more specifics than that. Umar never achieved that ability to be able to step at will to anywhere in the planet, but it seems, and also you don't know that their stepping without the need of a circle is to anywhere on the planet. It just says step without a circle, so you don't know the limitations of that. The other thing is that it mentions, like in another section when it's talking about their abilities, it mentioned the fact that you can jump between the ethereal plane at will, and then once you jump from the ethereal back to this plane, you can move around like that. So without, so it's short distance teleportation on this plane is fine, like Misty Step and ethereal steps and stuff. But the ability to transport yourself to anywhere on the planet, like jump to the next city down without the need of a horse, it does not go into detail about Horizon Walkers being able to do that or not. It says that it hints that Duncan and Ebony were able to. It does not seem like it's a guaranteed thing, though. So that's about all you're going to get on stepping on the same plane of existence, unfortunately. All right. Next piece of information. 1, 2, 3. Whether their powers are shareable. The section on the individual powers did discuss that Duncan has had the ability to get down his powers onto paper and then make a magical scroll out of them that he could either use later or give to somebody else, and in that respect his powers were shareable. It also talks about how it is hypothesized that other Horizon Walkers, but we do not know their names. It has been stated that legends throughout time, certain legends of heroes and famous demigod-like heroes, were possibly Horizon Walkers before we knew such terms exist, or plane steppers, or whatever they call them in this thesis. It was hypothesized that those might have been Horizon Walkers before we had such names for them. One such example is, and it names some hero like a Herculean kind of story. It says the heroes of Vaterlund, for instance, the dwarven hero. Let's give him a name. I've got my alphabet dice here. Thriss, Thriss. It is said that the dwarven hero Thriss from Vaterlund could have been a Horizon Walker because of such a time when he developed the ability to open doorways almost at will while he was fighting, pulling himself and another creature through it. Yada yada yada. What it goes on to describe this ability is basically a dimension door. Dimension door is not something that you get inherently as a Horizon Walker, but is something that is Horizon Walker-esque enough that you might be able to develop it. You might be able to learn how to do a dimension door. In which case, yes, you can take people with you. It's not exactly sharing your power, but it's in that moment sharing your ability to teleport someone. Other shareable powers, I don't believe it does go in to say that the ability to manipulate the planar magic, the fundamental force magic that imbues your powers and augments your powers for damage, it does not say that you can you can give that to somebody else. Nobody else has, none of the Horizon Walkers to date, or the stories of the legends of Horizon Walkers to date, has said that they have been able to find that force magic and then give that to somebody else for their attack, or something like that. We stepped with Mel when we came back. We did indeed, yes, we stepped with Mel when we came back. I'll say then that it also says a little something about like those that are particularly close to us when those that are particularly close to the Horizon Walkers when they use their abilities with portals can sometimes get influenced by that same opening of certain portals, opening and closing of certain portals. So it's a throwaway line that's in the bottom of a paragraph, but you gather from that maybe because Mel was so close to you, maybe Mel was like riding on your back, when you stepped yourself, she came with you. And in games mechanics terms, Mel is considered part of your character. I consider her part of your character. She is her own character and she does have her own personality and I roll for her. But the reason for Mel existing in this game, and like a meta, talking like meta for a second, Mel was always designed to be a companion animal essentially, because there are certain challenges from having a solo campaign. If you go down or get paralyzed or stunned or whatever, if you're on your own entirely, you're fucked. There's like a simple thing like a stun can lead to a TPK when there's only one of you. So I invented Mel as a way of like keeping you out of that essentially. So in mechanical terms, she is close enough to being a part of your character, or a character feature, a class feature, or whatever you want to consider her as, that she can just step with you when you step, because unless like story sense, she's too far away from you or whatever. While Mel is riding you and you want to teleport somewhere, I'll probably, more often than not, I'll probably just allow it to happen that she just goes with you. Anyway, that is that, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of information. So you've got one more piece. All right, so with your 13 from before, you've got accidental stepping and information about how accidentally you might step into another place, and specifically how you might get back again once you do. Abilities to step, like how you step in the first place and how you get control of it and how one goes about doing that. Or shareable powers is what I've just done, isn't it? So in fact, that's it. That was it. Those are the 2 pieces of information you don't manage to get from this thesis because you didn't roll well enough. So maybe another day, another time, you can come back to it and maybe you'll learn more information about accidental stepping or how to step. But unfortunately, Apis at this point is just too tired, too shattered, and just wants this to be over. You just close the book and you push it to the side. And you lean back in your like beanbag chair. Ugh. Rub your eyes a bit. And the thing is, you don't know how long it's been that you've been sitting here because time doesn't pass. So like the light streaming through the window is still looking like dawn. You had a big journey today. You woke up today. You went to train with Rikash. You had a big old fight that knocked you out twice, and you've been pretty physically exhausted. Then you've gone to the library and you've read for at least an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. You're not sure exactly how long has passed. You're probably pretty hungry, I'd say, because you haven't eaten in a while. What do you guys want to do? Ask the fairies in the library. How long is it till I'm expected to be at dinner with the Lord? Fairies say, I would say about 3 hours, give or take. The Lord will have a dinner bell rang. See, given 3 hours till dinner, you've probably breezed through lunch, which is probably why you're rather hungry. And again, they don't really have breakfast, lunch, dinner necessarily here because time of day. Important question, what's the weather like? Good question indeed. Let's see. That was cocked. That is below average precipitation. So it is, I'd say, dry, but overcast a little bit. Dry but overcast. Clouds in the sky are gorgeous. They don't just have like a dull grey overcast. They have like a greyish purple overcast. And it is beautiful to look at, but makes for a little blocking out the beautiful sky with beautiful clouds. So I guess a good trade. A smallish lunch so we don't ruin our appetite for dinner. Can we eat snacks in the library? Could I eat any snacks in here? And one of the fairies says, no, we would prefer you. I almost went Mel then. We would prefer you to remain with your eatings and foods outside of the library for the sake of greasy fingers and crumbs and such. Understandable. I'm so hungry I could eat a Rikash. I mean a horse. Just hypothetically here. Hypothetically, and I'd appreciate you keep this between us. How would the merry gentlemen react to me playing like a small prank on them? Do they enjoy pranks or not? I would first advise that your ability to play pranks might be underwhelming when it comes to the merry gentlemen. If you are able to pull a prank on the merry gentlemen, then that is impressive. They are very well aware of their surroundings and their nature of pranks, but they usually have a pretty good sense of humor. They are pretty merry, nonetheless, as the name would suggest. Oh, by the way, you would have used merry gentleman maybe, but the fairies are not calling him the merry gentleman. They're calling him Ordval. Ordval has a very merry disposition, as his alternative name would suggest, as his title would suggest. Pranks are usually go down well, but as with everything, it depends on who the prank was from and the strength of the prank, and whether it was in good taste or whether it was in bad taste, whether it had malicious intent, whether anyone was hurt. All sorts of factors come in. Small pranks, I'm sure, would go fine, but I would advise against expecting you would succeed in said pranks. Right. I also want to look at the titles of the least important books too. I didn't come up with those, but I can come up with some titles for the books that the merry gentleman finds least important, the ones furthest round to the left, the right-hand side of the library. I was thinking like Exploding Cigar and Whoopee Cushion. Good try. Pranking might go as well for us as lying. A harmless little boo with Pass Without Trace and a Nat 20 on Stealth is our most likely option, I reckon. If you got a Pass Without Trace and a Nat 20 on Stealth you're proficient in, and at this level you're a level 7, so you've got a +3 modifier, so you'd have a +6 to your Stealth, +16 with Pass Without a Trace. If you got a Nat 20 on Stealth, you'd have a 36 Stealth. I'm going to pull up the merry gentleman's stats real quick, because I am interested to know whether you'd be able to sneak up on him with a Nat 20. I might not tell you, but I'm interested to know. And yes, the merry gentleman has stats. If they have stats, they can kill. They can be killed. Where is it? Archfey. Interesting. Let's just say you can try. Might even work. All right. So pranking the merry gentleman. It seems like you could try, and if you do it with the right intentions and you catch him in the right mood, then he might even take it well. But as somebody said in the chat, it might also escalate. If you prank him, he might prank you back. And an Archfey's pranks might be a little more than you're expecting, perhaps. Alright, so what's everybody wanting to do now? Let's go outside and have a small snack and a short rest with Mel under the clouds. Check the sus book titles on the way out. Catch the merry gentleman with a rickroll. Prank Rikash, the centaur fighter. I have to go now, guys. We'll last until next session before I try and start a prank war. Could be a good bonding moment. Could be. No pranking Fae people, please. What does everybody want to do? Go outside, have a rest. Do people still want to read? We've still got some more books. We've got. We asked the fairies to grab us a couple more. We've read the 2 on Horizon Walkers and the 1 on the Sun Ritual. We've got a book, a map book of the Feywild. We've got 3 books on portals, and 2 books on therianthropy. Play some panpipes and then the werebooks. Head outside. Book titles, most and least interesting. Snack and then short rest. We just read 1 billion pages of books. Don't know how pranky we're feeling. Rest and eat and go back to the portal books. Want to go for a little bit of a walk after all that thesis? Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, a lot of people say that we do need to read Bomb, but we want to rest after that. Very thick thesis. So I think Apis is of the opinion that they'll come back to it. They say, can I just go for a walk, come back to this? Is it okay to leave these here? And if fairies say yes, of course. So are you done with these ones? And you say, yeah, these ones are. You can pop back. They'll take the 3 that you've done with, and they'll zoom off and place those back in the appropriate places. I'll be back in a short while. I'm just gonna go stretch out a bit. You take a brain break. You leave the library. I'll have you make a perception check as you leave the library, please. So go to the dice cam and 13. 13's not bad. You do not get forest bonus before you ask Wraith. You get a perception of +2, and your modifier of your proficiency bonus of +3 takes that 13 to an 18. 18's pretty good. You hear, with an 18, as you're leaving the library out onto the balcony, you hear hushed voices speaking in Sylvan, and you can tell that it's some of the help, the house staff. Maybe it's some of the fairies, or maybe a couple of the dryads that you've seen walking around. And they seem to be talking in panic, sort of panic, not like life is in danger level of panic, but anxious nature. And one of them saying, "But why is she coming here? Do we not have?" "I don't know any more than you do. I just know that she said that she's on her way. Who told you?" Tidu told me. Tidu said that he heard that someone is on her way here to meet with the Ordval. But why is she? But what would she need here? She never comes to Avalon. I don't know. I think it's the new person. What do you mean the new person? The guest, the one that's for the dwarf from the material realms. She's interested in. Yes, of course. Have we been told what to prepare for her, or what? I don't know. Just her usual things, I suppose. Wild berries and such. And with that, they start to move away from wherever they were. You weren't able to quite place where that was coming from. That's someone in the house further down the corridor. Have we met T2? TWETU, by the way. Have we met that particular person? No. T2 you haven't been introduced to. You imagine from context that they're probably another staff member. We could find Rikash and ask him who's coming. That's true. We could do that. What do you guys want to do? You can have a short rest. You can go outside, have a little something to eat. Remember I said you're starting to feel peckish, hungry. You've got some rations left, but not very many, because you've been eating your material plane rations as much as you can, because you didn't want to accept hospitality from fey creatures. But now you're starting to run out of them. See the book titles on the way out? We'll grab the book titles on the way back in Trio Dive, because people were like, info dump, too much stuff, thesis, need to have a brain break. Ask someone outside, not in the library, maybe in a kitchen or something, if we can talk to T2. Short rest and eat. Can go to the kitchen, grab a snack, fill our rations. Yeah, we'll do that. All right, so you head down the stairs. You go back along the corridors. Eventually, you get back out into the main foyer. You go back down the stairs into the main foyer. You find that you ask some staff, and you find a kitchen. The kitchen is beautiful and really well stocked and very well looked after, very clean. Almost like prestidigitation exists in this world, and so things would probably be cleaner than you'd find here in the real world. You find who would be working in here. I think you find a gnome-looking creature. Gnome-looking creature with like a green hat that flops back over their head, almost like a Santa's little helper elf kind of a style creature, but a little bit stockier and a little bit bigger and more jowly in the face. You ask this guy, is it okay if I? Well, sorry, no, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to get some food now, and he looks at you with like a sly smile that said like. You saw his eyes light up when you almost started asking for something. Is it okay if I grab some food? And he was like, ooh. And then you said, no, I'm going to grab some food. And he kind of like just smiles as if like the enjoyment of playing a game with someone who's caught something that you were about to do, like a chess move or something. You're like, oh, I was really hoping they'd let go of that because I could see a perfect move. So he kind of just nods and you walk into the pantry. You have a little look around what the food's in here. There's all kinds of rations, essentially. So an easy target, exactly. Yeah. You grab some of the rations. You replenish yours with some more Feywild rations, and you find something easy, nice and easy to eat. Some like bread and chunks of meat and cheese and things. You put yourself together something, not wanting to be in anybody's debt, so not wanting to ask them for a favor on your behalf. You grab that food, you head out, and you say, "Excuse me, what? Do you know T2?" And they say, "Of course I know T2." Do you know where T2 is? Of course I know where T2 is. Okay. Could you introduce me to T2? Of course, I could introduce you to T2. Jesus, are you going to introduce me to T2? I might introduce you to T2. Are you T2? I am T2. And then he just kind of laughs. Right. T2, I'm Archer. You can call me Archer. I can. Right. I'm going to take this food and I'm going to eat it. That's all right? That's no problems to me. Sounding a bit mel, isn't he? I'll put a bit more jowl in it. No problems to me. Right. Is anybody wanting to ask him anything? You've overheard that T2 has told somebody on the staff that somebody is coming and it's probably because of you and blah blah blah. So if you want to inquire about that, you can do. Otherwise, you can just, you know where to find T2 now for interrogating him later if you need. Guard your words, Apis, carefully. We do want to know who she is. Who is it that's coming? Who's visiting us? You are. Who is visiting us for dinner? You will be dining with Ordval. Tell me, everyone who will be at dinner tonight. He smiles again as if like, all right, you've done it. Like you found the right words to use. Like he's enjoying the game of messing with this material planar, and so he smiles when you get the right wording and just demand it of him instead. Tell us who will be at dinner tonight. He says, "You will be at dinner with Lord Ordval. I believe your giant bee will be joining. I've been asked to prepare some nectar for her. You will also be joined with Rikash because Lord Ordval wishes to be brought up to speed on how your training is going. And you will be joined with the Wild Woman. The Wild Woman will be joining us." He doesn't answer because it wasn't a question. You just said it, and he's playing that game again. Tell me about the Wild Woman. The Wild Woman is another Archfey from the Council of Archfey. What is it you want to know? Anything in particular? Because he's you can tell from this guy that he is enjoying fucking with you. So, like, unless you're asking him specific questions, he will keep just, like, avoiding things. What is her interest in coming here? You are. Why am I interested into her? The Wild Woman has always had an interest in all things from the material plane. She has heard that you have been here, and that the other one, Gradale, has been here. And she is interested in why. What was that? What are the rumors about me? Why? How has she heard? There have been rumors among the creatures that you have met, I suppose. I don't know. Can we make a check to see if our mum's stories covered her? Very good question, McLover. Let's find out. Let's roll a history check. History, Arcana. History makes most sense to me. Let's roll a history check to see if you remember any stories about the wild woman from your mother. 15, not bad. For 15 plus your history of 3 is an 18. With an 18 history check, you remember the name, the wild woman. Your mother didn't have a lot of stories about her, but you do remember with an 18 that she also goes by the name the Witch of the Woods. Let's see. What else? Anything about this that you would know from that? I think just, yeah, she goes by the Witch of the Woods or the Wild Woman, and she's fascinated with all things from the material plane. But your mother never met her or knew that had any reason to know much about her, so even with an 18 you're not going to get a hell of a lot more than that, I'm afraid. What are some of the other names that the Wild Woman's known as? She goes by the Unblinking, Wupolani, Old Girl, Curious, Witch in the Woods, I believe. I don't remember others. We went through the list of council members in a previous bit. Do we recall anything about her? Did we? I don't think Apis has gone through the list of council members in character. We had 7 of the council members from Farangol and his relationship with them, but she was not one of the ones on his trial jury. What's your opinion of the wild woman? I think her tastes are simple and therefore she's easy to cater for. Being that he's a kitchen staff, he's catered his response to discussing her palate. When our friend did the test in the mountains, what was used to represent her? She was not represented by it. What part of the Feywild's her domain? She lives and rules over Donger. Where is Donger? It is on the dusk side of Gaete. You've never heard of Donger. But if you'd read the map book before you came out of the library, you might have heard of Donger. There are 12 and we've heard of 7. I'll ask that in character so that you can get the information. How many Archfey are on the council? There are 12 total. Right. Does she visit Ordval often? No, rarely at all. Her domain does not border Ordval's. What are her interests beyond food? Creatures from the material plane, spells, items, anything from the material plane. How magic works there. Food that's from there. Tell me if the wild woman's friend or foe to me, and I should prepare. That is up to the whims of her. I would not know. I would not expect she would be a foe to you unless you are a foe to her. What does she look like? She looks like whatever she wants to look like, as all our Archfey. What does she most often look like? He smiles again, enjoying your frustration. She most often is a humanoid woman with long, dark, wavy hair, ageless, girly face. She's graceful but slim. You afraid of the Witch of the Woods? No. Should I be? To a certain extent, you should be afraid of any Fae, because you are not from here. Okay. Do her interests align with Lord Ordval? Occasionally, yes. Who knows? Who knows what the interests of the Archfey are, eh? Are you going to bother me all night, or can I get back to preparing for food? Is she tricky and manipulative?
You are not from here, eh?
Will she be happy to meet me and not want to be annoying?
You're a funny one. You will get used to being here soon, I'm sure.
Visitors from the material plane are seldom then?
Not of late, after the Urk arrived. But yes, usually.
What was that? An Uruk?
Yeah, the Urk was here. Grid was, I think, what she was called.
I don't... Who's that?
She's an Urk.
Yeah, but like, who was she to... Like, when was she here?
Recently.
Not Orc Wraith. Uruk. Uruks in my games are the names for half Orc, half human people. People who have half ancestry from Orcs and half from humans. And Sturrock, S-T-U-R-U-K, Sturrock is the name for people who are half Orc, half Dwarf. So, what is this? Is this Grid here now?
I don't know. She was around recently. She might have left, or she might have gone on a journey or something. But she is another from the material plane that has had interest for... I guess that's why the wild woman is coming. I don't know. Am I her?
What did the Uruk do that changed how often people come to this realm?
She was from the material plane, so are you. So that is probably why wild woman is interested in coming, to see why there have been 2 visitors from the material plane in relative quick succession.
Smile at his frustration. Nice, Milzy. I'm going to give you inspiration for that. Love it. You get frustrated at his you get enjoyment out of his frustration at your incessant questions, after he's been enjoying your frustration at him not answering your questions. Love it. You get some Schadenfreude enjoyment out of getting this guy frustrated, and you start to nibble on the food that you've gotten for yourself. It's delicious. It's very nice. In fact, it's way better than you expected it to be, because it's like ham and bread and cheese. So what you're expecting is ham and bread and cheese, but as you put it in your mouth, it's like, oh my god, that is the most fragrant and tasteful cheese. And you are reminded that, oh yeah, that's right, senses are turned up to 11. Senses in the Feywild are hypersaturated, not just colours, but tastes and smells and sounds and everything, music and enjoyment, and you enjoy the food as you nibble down on the food you've gotten. It's only a small amount because you're having a light lunch, a snack as it were, to tide you over a minning on, as I would call it in the UK. Having a minning on, you say, this food is acceptable. It's quite good. Now let's go find Rakash and ask him about the wild woman. Seems more like the type of share information without trying to mess with us. Yeah, fair enough. Alright, so who wants to do what now? Are we going to find Rakash? You can put a thumbs up if you like Redal's suggestion. Go outside, find Rakash, maybe have a short rest, whatever. Or a thumbs down if you want to do anything else. Go find Mel. So thumbs up to go outside, find Rakash. Thumbs down to anything else. Find Mel, make sure she's not drunk. Alright, most people saying, yeah, let's do that. So you wander out the kitchen. Alright, you're about to thank him, and then you're like, have a good day. And you you walk out. You walk across the lounge, not the lounge, the foyer. You head outside into the morning sun still. After several hours, getting late into the afternoon, or what feels like late into the afternoon. It's still morning, so it's bizarre. But you look around and you see Mel, or at least you hear her first, and you follow the sound until you see her around in the flowers, and she seems to be dancing with fairies. Well, you think fairies, but they're a lot larger than fairies. And they don't seem to have wings. They have fairy-like bodies, but they're about the size of... They're about 2 feet tall, so they're about the size of Briar, or a very small hobbit. but very definitively fairies in their skin tones. They're sort of greens and sparkles embedded into their skin, and they're dancing in the flowers with her. You alright, Mel?
Yes, Apis! Yes, sir! Apis is my friend.
Let's roll her an intelligence check with disadvantage because she's drunk. 3 and a 2, so she forgets to not call you Apis. Calls out, Apis is my friend. Archer, Empress.
Archer is my friend.
Excuse me, I would never dine with the merry gentleman. Wouldn't you though? Wouldn't you though? Because I have a piece of paper that might say otherwise. Also, this is before all of your problems with the merry gentleman. Ladies and gentlemen, FBGX, the person who plays the Uruk grid, who has come to this plane at some point. At some point. And she does not know. She does not remember it, because when she returned from the from the Feywild, I had her roll a wisdom save. She failed it, so I took the several sheets of A4 paper that I'd written up all the things that she'd done in the Feywild while she'd been here, and I tore them up into little pieces. And then I gave her a couple of pieces and said, "That's all you remember of your time here." And that was years ago, IRL. And she has, every time we've been playing, she has a little bit at a time been rolling memory checks to see if she can recall any of her time in the Feywild. And I have slowly, bit at a time, been giving her some of her story of the things she's been doing in the Feywild. And she's been piecing them back together. We play online now, so I rarely get them. That is true for FBG. You need to come round. Screenshot, zoom, enhance. Alright, so you are in the rear of the Merry Gentleman's abode. You're looking for Rakash, but you found Mel in the meantime. Mel is seemingly having a good old time. She's drunk and she's enjoying the flowers and she's dancing with fairies. So you leave her to her business and you go and find Rakash. I'm going to roll an investigation check for you to see if you can find him. Let's go to the dice cam. Bounced on top of the other one and cocked. 10 plus your investigation of 3 would be a 13. 13 is unfortunately not enough. So you spend a good half an hour, 40 minutes walking around the nearby land of the Merry Gentleman's abode. What I will say is during that 40 minutes you continue on past the flower fields that Mel is in, and you go towards this enormous tree. As you approach this enormous tree out the back of the Merry Gentleman's abode, it stretches up way more than you'd expect. It's an enormous tree that is in proportion still to that of a regular oak tree, but it looks like it's just been sized up, scaled up. It looks like a regular oak until you walk closer to it and realize that you're not getting close to it as quickly as you'd think, and then you realize, oh wow, geez, that's huge. And then once you get close enough to it, you can see that there is a pool around it, a moat of sorts. There is a moat, and the tree is built into the island in the center of this circular pool of liquid. The liquid itself is like a violet and turquoise mixing together in the water's colors, and you can see that it's very beautiful with the sunrise light shining off of it. The pool is about 15 or 20 feet wide, so too big for you to leap across. You could potentially swim across it if you wanted to or whatever, but yeah, you see this huge tree, and that is the marker of what Farangol originally pointed to when you came through the mountains and said, that's the Merry Gentleman's place over there. Just an enormous tree that was way above the canopy of any other tree. Sounds like a pit. Yes, this is a water pit right now, a water-filled pit. Around the edge of this moat is a marble stone curb almost that drops down into the water. And then on the other side, on the island side of things, a similar marble curb, as it were, and then a small area of grass, like very vibrant grass, and then the beginning of the base of this tree. I'll have you make a nature check real quick. Just nature check. 5 plus your nature of +3. You're not proficient in nature, even though you're a ranger. So an 8. With an 8, you don't really get what I was going to give you there, so I'm just going to say you acknowledge that this is definitely a magical tree. Trees wouldn't grow to this scale, and trees of this scale wouldn't be able to have branches that are this wide. The tallest trees in the world IRL tend to just be long and thin, because obviously if you go tall and then also have huge branches out, you're going to be in trouble trying to keep those alive and intact. But this one does. This one has those huge branches that are way higher than it should be, so it's obviously magical. So, what do you want to do? You can't find Rikash, you've had a little wander around, you've found this amazing tree. What now? How many trees needed to be defined as forest for forest bonus? More than this one. There is forest around you, but you're definitely in a cultivated land. This is more like a one of those English woods rather than a wild forest. Can we touch the tree? No, it's a fully circular moat, and there is nothing that goes over it. There's no bridge or anything. Anything around we could affix the magic rope to on both sides? Not close enough for your magic rope. Your magic rope's 60 feet long. The moat's about 15 to 20 feet long. The tree itself is easily 20 feet diameter. And there's nothing within 20 feet of the moat for you to attach your rope to. This tree's surely the size of 20, so therefore forest. Back to the werebooks now then, library. Come back here another day when we can use Misty Step to get there and back again. Back to the reading about portals. Take 20 on this later. Yeah. Alright then. Are there any fish in the moat? There are not. You do not see anything in the moat, and it seems like the moat is about 15 feet deep, give or take. You look down into it and you see that the base of it seems to be like marble. Does this tree have a name like Tane Mahuta? It does. You do not know it. It's not etched on it. There's no plaque. But this tree does have a name. Should we use the detect portal feature from Horizon Walker? We could do if you want. Thumbs up if you want to use a detect portal feature. Thumbs down if you do not. If you think about the information from the Wild Woman is urgent enough, go ask the librarians for books about Archfey and her specifically. Walk around the moat, check for illusions. You do so, you're pretty sure you don't see any illusions. Alright, thumbs up, yes, detect portal. So you stand in front of this tree and you get in touch with your abilities to detect portals. It does not take you very long. A very strong sense of a portal comes from this tree. It is unmistakable. It hits you almost immediately as soon as you start to focus on it. It also is just occurring to me now that you have... Oh no, you haven't yet. Never mind. That's in the future. I almost got distracted with like Apus's future self before we jumped back to this moment. Smacks us in the head with how strong it is. Yeah, it's a very strong sense of a portal from the centre of this tree. We asked TomTom where the closest portal to the Shadowfell is. TomTom! Little blue-shelled beetle comes out into the corner of your hand and looks up at you. Where's the closest portal to the Shadowfell? Just looks up at you. Shadowfell. Is there a closest portal to the Shadowfell? Starts to sort of semi-wander around your hand. Very quickly comes back to the centre of your hand and just looks up at you. Seems like there isn't a portal to the Shadowfell within the range of TomTom's abilities. Did we detect any portal? Yeah, a very strong sense of a portal in that tree. A gigantic tree. Having read about another Horizon Walker having the ability to sense where portals go, could we concentrate, see if we feel anything? Probably won't work, but makes sense that we'd try. Absolutely, we should try redial. Let's give me a... let's see. 10. I'm not going to tell you what I was doing there, but you got a 10, which was not enough. You focus and there's you don't know what you're looking for. There's no way of you knowing. It's like you're trying to. It's like you in real life trying to concentrate to see if you can tell which direction Zimbabwe is from here. It's like I don't know what I wouldn't know where to begin that. I don't know Zimbabwe's longitude or latitude compared to my own current. I don't know which direction it is, and even if I did, I don't know which way north is. So like, you don't know where to begin and trying to focus on that. Can we collect a vial of liquid from the moat? I believe we have some empty vials. Yes, we do. We've got 5 empty vials. You can see below our net in the inventory here. We've got 5 empty vials. Thumbs up if you want to try and collect some liquid from that moat. Thumbs down if you do not. I'm going to try and fill a small glass vial without touching the water ourselves, Tree of Day says. Interesting. There's lots of yeses and nos here. Quite a few people want to fill a vial. A lot of people don't. We ask TomTom if it's the material plane and then try again to see if we feel anything that makes us think of the material plane if it is. There is a limit to TomTom's uses per day, but you do ask TomTom. Could you tell me the nearest plane to the nearest location to the material plane? Right up your finger directly at the tree. Like a pointer dog. Very definitively. This tree has a portal to the material plane in it. All right. It's mostly yeses, but I'm going to put it to a poll just to get a definitive response. Collect a vial of this moat water. Yes or no. With 52% of the vote, Apis decides yes, we're going to fill a vial of liquid from this moat. That is not a very high majority. 48% of Apis did not want to touch this moat. So Apis is in two minds about it for sure. They go up to the moat. They hear the jingling of glass in their bag, which goes, maybe we should fill a vial of this liquid. And you go, I probably shouldn't. But then that call of the void takes over and you go, yeah, I probably shouldn't. Yeah, and before you know it, your hand is in your bag, pulling out a vial. You pop the top off it. I probably shouldn't touch this. As you lean down, you sort of crouch down beside it. You see that the top of this surface of this moat is glassy smooth. There is a bit of wind coming through. There's a breeze. It is not affecting the lake at all, the water at all. Should I? I probably shouldn't. And then dip. The bottom of the vial goes in. You try and hold it by the very rim of the vial. Something like this, but on a slightly smaller scale. You hold it like this. You're dipping it into the water. You're hoping to get the water up to the point where it starts to fill into the thing without touching it to your fingertip. And you're going to try and trying to fill it without touching the water, as I know somebody mentioned in the chat, like, hey, let's try to not touch it. The second that the bottom of the vial breaks that glassy smooth surface, it dips into the water. Nothing else happens. So you try and fill the vial. This is going to be a dexterity check. It's going to be sleight of hand. You're not proficient in sleight of hand, so it's just going to be straight dexterity. And we'll see if you touch the water. That is a 6. A 6 plus 3 dexterity. That's going to be a 9. Do you want to reroll with Lucky Horseshoe? Thumbs up, thumbs down. You've got a 9 on your dexterity to fill this vial without touching the water. We're pretty much even on the yeses, nos rerolls. Does the big tree count as a forest bonus? It doesn't, and even if it did, you wouldn't get it on this check. Oh, it's pretty hard to ascertain whether people are yesing or noing here, because there's kind of down the middle on it. So I'm going to put it to a poll so I can get an actual response. Reroll? Question mark. This is going to use your Lucky Horseshoe. And then you might not be able to get your Lucky Horseshoe back until you have a long rest again, maybe, or until you do your sun ritual again, maybe. Or put the vial in the net and dip the net. You could do that. You guys don't even know if the water does anything if you touch it. You've convinced yourself that it's probably not a good idea to touch it. And yet you just had the idea of, yeah, I still want to fill it. Wait, we're going to dinner with two archfey and no horseshoe. No. With 50% of the vote, nobody knows whether or not to reroll or not. So we're going to put it down to a dice roll. Odds, you will reroll. Evens, you will not. Odds, you will reroll. So you roll a 6 on your dexterity check to not touch the water. Away goes the inspiration. I'll use inspiration rather than lucky horseshoe because that has a chance of coming back within the day. And you're going to reroll it. Here we go. Almost an 18. It rocked to a 4. Unfortunately, you got better off the first time with a 9. So with a 9 dexterity check, you dip the thing in. It fills up. You see water going into the vial, and as it fills up, you try and pull it up, but you feel a little spot of it touch your thumb. You end up touching the water. I need you to make a dexterity saving throw. This is, thankfully, you are proficient in dexterity saving throws, as you can see by the white outline around the 3 there, which means you get to add your proficiency bonus of 3 to this. So you're going to get a 6 total to the roll. Ooh, that's almost cocked, but I'll accept it. 13 plus 6 is a 19. With a 19 dexterity saving throw, the reason for the save is that you feel the water touch your thumb, and it immediately starts to burn like acid. And you just with that 19 dexterity save manage to to keep a hold of the vial and pull it out of yourself without sloshing more of it out of the vial over yourself. You pull it out and put it down on the stone, and it kind of rocks a little bit. But eventually it sort of stands upright, and you burn your thumb. Thankfully, it only touched the tip of your thumb, so it's not enough for a point of damage or whatever. But you know full well that touching this water is not going to be a pleasant experience. If you were to try and swim across it, no thank you. So we have no thumbprint now. Just the tip of your thumb on your right hand has been burned as though by acid. But you have a vial. You have a vial of this water. It is purplish in liquid, purplish in appearance, and you pop a little cork in it, and you put it carefully in your pouch. All right. So you have your vial of moat water. You head back to the library now. Yes. Presumably. Enough outdoors. We've taken a break from braining long enough. Let's go back to the library. Did we do the cork check? Yeah, you check the cork, and hard to tell. It could be burning away at the cork. Maybe. Let's have let's roll to see if an investigation check to see if you can tell the chemical makeup of this cork versus water. 16 plus your intelligence is 3, 19. Yeah. Is that burning away, or was that cork already kind of that damaged at the bottom? Back and forth. After a few minutes, you're pretty sure. No, I think it's fine actually. Pop the cork back out. Have a look at it. It smells just like water. It smells like odorless. Doesn't seem to be affected. You pop it back in. You're pretty sure the cork is not being affected by the water. Water/acid. All science vials and corks are resistant to all chemicals, right? Science. Science! I wonder if it's still acid or it's just plain water now that it isn't part of the moat. There's one easy way to find out, Kindy. Does Apis have an intrusive enough thought that they want to find out if it's still acid? Is it still colourful? It is? Still colourful? I really want to say yes. No, let's go. Apis' intrusive thoughts do not win out this time. So you head inside. Heading back up to the library, you head back into the room where you were reading. You sit down on the cushions and the beanbag sort of chairs, and you pull up those books again. Which one do we want to start with? Do we want the map book? Have a little look at the maps of the Feywild. Do we want the planar, the portals books, the books about portals, or do we want the therianthropy books? I will read you the titles of them so that you can make your decision a little better. The map book is called Hiking the Wilds, the Best Trails in the Feywild. It seems to be a book that has sections for each of the Feywild regions, and each of those, at the beginning of each of the chapters, has an overall map of the Feywilds. It goes into a little bit of detail about like the countries or the regions of the Feywilds, and it labels certain trails that are interesting for various reasons. The books on the portals. You have one that's called A Step into the Unknown, a detailed discourse concerning multidimensional travel and its impacts on society and local economies by Professor L. Wone, PhD Musfater. What is that one? Whatever that is. Some bunch of letters that you don't know. That seems to be a university textbook written by an economics professor, and it points out several problems with the economy as a result of the planes, the different planes. It has an early chapter on about common methods of planar travel, but not the science behind it, it seems. Then you've got a book called Nothing But Holes, How to Know Where a Portal Goes Before Going. It seems to be a field guide that points out common features present around various portals, like, for instance, the wind around your air portal when you went before. Then there's another portal book called The Scientific Journal of Lurael Tholokol. Scientific Journal of Lurael Tholokol, which seems to be an experimental journal of a scientist who tried to create and close portals. Finally, you've got two books on therianthropy called The Beast Within, Understanding Your Inner Animal, and Curses, Foiled Again, Common Curses and How to Break Them. Those are the 6 books that you have left at your disposal. You can obviously grab more books from the library if you want, but those are the ones that you asked the Fays to get you in the last episode. Know where you are, know where you're going. We're in the Feywild. Look at the Fey maps. We have more urgent needs than our current book list. We're having dinner with multiple Archfey. We need information on her, so we're more... Yeah, that's another option as well. There's those 6 that you've previously prepared, but you can also ask these fairies in the library to get you a book on the Wild Woman if there's something there. All right. So, given the options that I just gave you, I'll put it to a poll and we'll see which ones we want to read. Question: which to read? Map. The portals, the therianthropy, the secret shelf, the private shelf. You want to, not that you'll read books from there, but some people wanted to look at the titles from there. Private shelf titles, or ask for Wild Woman book. All right. Ask with 52% of the vote. Apis decides to ask the fairies for another book. Sorry, excuse me.
Yes?
I was wondering. I've got these books to read, and I still want to read them. Excuse me, but I just want to know if you've got another book.
Yes, of course. But do you know the name of it?
No, not a specific book. I just want to know if you've got information on the Wild Woman. The face of the fairy is hard to read. Let me give you an insight check to see if you can. What's that? 17? 17. That's good. 17 plus your insight of 2. With a 19, you read this apprehension over the face of the fairy. Nerves. A little bit of acknowledgement that suddenly the stakes have gone up from this simple interaction of like, tell me what you want and I'll get it for you, to something a little more like, oh shit. See, yeah, the wild woman, the witch of the woods, Kyrios, old girl, and she's like,
Yeah, I know what you mean. What sort of information are you looking for?
Anything of, well, I'm told she's coming to dinner tonight, and her eyes go wide.
Oh.
I was just hoping to maybe I could get a better idea of what to expect before she arrives.
There are, I could get you information about Donger, the region that she rules over. A little bit more direct information about her would be just information that would help us to not annoy her.
Oh, she will be fascinated with you. You will not annoy her.
Do you not have information about her directly?
We do. But it is.
And she points past you to the bookshelf that is for Merry Gentleman's Eyes only. Okay. Right. Information about her interest in the material plane?
That would be probably.
She points to that book. Right. I was chatting with Titu about her, and I want to know what to expect from her.
Oh, well, she's a lovely. She's pleasant. She's a little bit. She's quite wild, as the name would suggest. She is curious about folk like you, and people from your planes.
Yeah, I got all that. I'm not trying to overstep here or put you in any bad situation. I'm just curious.
No. I can tell you what I know of her.
What's the most important book on the shelves that we can look at that's about her?
We do not have information about the other Archfey in these books. Information about their realms or about the people that work with them, perhaps, or creatures that they often enjoy, or historical events, maybe. But information about them is not kept here.
Right. Does she have a zoo? A menagerie?
What do you mean?
Does she have a menagerie in back home?
I have never been to her home.
Okay. You seem a bit nervous, if you don't mind me saying. Is there something about her visit that would have you on edge?
I am grateful that
she would honor us with their presence. Right. Is that the sort of official response that you're expected to give?
It is an honor for an Archfey to grant another Archfey with their presence.
I bet it is. Is it something that's nerve-wracking for you, though?
We are expected to work extra hard on trying to make sure that their visit is pleasant.
Okay. Does Lord Ordval have dossiers on all of the Archfey? Her eyes go back and forth.
I imagine Lord Ordval keeps information on the other Archfey as much as they know, yes.
There are two things you should know about the wild woman. First, she's a woman. Do you know what she finds most fascinating about the material plane? What about us might fascinate her the most?
I'm afraid I do not. I was not privy to any conversations with her when she was last here.
She visited here before then?
Yes.
Many times?
Not many times. Maybe a few.
You've met her? You've met her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm very glad to chat with her. I don't want to become her experiment. Should I be concerned about being harmed or taken? I'm going to make an insight check for you. 3 plus 2. This fairy has started to busy herself in her work again. She's gone back down to like one of those book tray, what do they call them? Like a little trolley, little book trolley. And she's faced away from you as you're asking her questions, so her little hands are going through pages and stuff. And so it's harder to read her response to that question. Should I be concerned about being hammered or taken?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Sense sort of whispers. Would you feel any better if the visiting Archfey was someone else other than the Wild Woman? It is an honor to be visited by any of the Archfey. You've said that. Is there anything that I could do that would make her visit unpleasant, so I know what to avoid, what not to do? That you are a guest. There is nothing. You are not expected to abide by the same sorts of rules as the Fae to a certain extent. You are allowed a little leeway in your behaviors. Well, don't concern yourself. I'm just curious. If the questions I'm asking can't be answered, you can just say that. I don't mean to impose. It's okay. I'm happy to help you. I'm here to help any of Ordval's guests. I'm really getting the sense that you're afraid of her. No, she is a curious woman. She is very curious about what interests her, and when she finds something interesting, she will explore it. If information on the Archfey is off limits to me, how about court etiquette? Oh yes, I can do. She doesn't even finish her sentence, and she flits off away from you. I'd hate to unknowingly offend someone. You're shouting after her. She's left. She flies back at some point, and she's got a book that is very gaudy looking. It's a hardback leather book with golden trim around it, and it looks like it's been made from, or maybe dyed like a pale green color, but it seems like it's you get the impression that the leather itself is probably a greenish color. She hands that to you. And court etiquette: how not to offend how not to offend when a visitor appears in the Feywild, sort of thing. Thank you. If you have a book, the book on the Donger you said, I'll take that as well. She immediately flits away without even acknowledging. She flits back again. Another book. This one's more of a travel guide kind of a thing, of like, and it's written in Sylvan. It seems like it's aimed at Sylvan Feywild natives rather than a material plane book for people who are visiting. It's more of a staycation kind of book for the people who are from here. Right. Thank you. Not thank you. You did the job that I needed you to do, and now I'm going to go read these. You turn around, you leave the poor lady alone, and you head back to your little reading nook. So, opening the books, which one are you interested in first? You're gonna read through that first one about court etiquette and things to avoid when you're meeting the Fae. Etiquette. We're going to be having dinner with them, so we'll need to know. Alright. I have written something somewhere about this stuff. Alright, you're going to take 20 on this, I assume, so you're going to give it as best you can to understand the information in this book. The main stuff that you come across is things that you already know, like asking for a thing gives the chance for them to do you a favour by giving you that thing. Means that you are then in their debt because they've done a thing for you. Likewise, thanking them is about the whole thing about not thanking them is about you're acknowledging that they've done something for you by thanking them, which again puts you in their debt because you've thanked them. The main currency here in the Feywild is in people owing you favors. Compliments, insults, and agreements and deals are all very powerful as if they are currencies. How people reputation, how people think about other people is like a big currency here. It also talks about some things that you didn't know about, like stuff that's it's going to be very difficult for you to
understand because it's not things that seem to have any logical reason for them, such as stepping through a doorway with the dominant foot. You have to step through a doorway with your dominant foot whenever you journey. You haven't been aware of that, so you're not sure if you've happened to have done that automatically just by chance, or whether you've stepped through the doorway on your non-dominant foot and people have just kind of like allowed it to pass because, as the fairy told you just now, like you can get away with certain things. I've written something somewhere. Protocols, here we go. You're expected to bring a gift every time you enter the house of an archfey. You're meant to present them with a gift because they're presenting you with a gift of hospitality, and it's meant to be an equivalent exchange, so that nobody's in anybody's debt. You're expected to call the archfey by their title, Lord of the place that they're from, Lady of the place that they're from. Is there a non-binary term for Lord and Lady? Because there are 12 archfey. 4 of them identify as male, 4 identify as female, and 4 of them don't identify as a gender. So Lord of blah, Lady of blah, or Liege of blah. I like Liege. Liege works because it's got the alliteration of the L's. Lord of Odval, she would be the Lady of Donga. It's with a U-R, by the way. D-O-N-G-U-R. Donga. She would be Lady of Donga. You can also, once appropriate, and it goes into like a really complicated thing of like when to know it is and is not appropriate to call them certain things. If in doubt, call them the Lady of Donga. But like with Ordval, you see all of his staff calling him Ordval. She has a similar name, which you'd have to learn which name she likes, in the same way that Merry Gentleman likes Ordval. And after a certain time, or after you've done a certain thing, or after you've gotten a certain like reputation with her, you can then call her by this other name rather than the Lady of Donga. It says to let's see. It says that court etiquette around like times around like circadian rhythm is to just find yours and go with it, and to never apologize or be like be apologetic or like not deprecating, subjugating in like your needs. If you are hungry, you'll eat. If you're tired, you sleep, and you should never feel like you have to fit to somebody else's circadian rhythm. The staff here all work on their own circadian rhythms, so they'll be working when they're awake and they'll be sleeping when they're not, if they're a type of creature that needs sleep. They don't rely on the light outside changing to tell us when to do things, so they'll just do the things when they need to do them. You also learn that when seating for the first meal after waking, you need to use the left side of the chair. So, after you have a wake or a rest, a sleep, a long rest, whatever, your first meal after that, which in the material plane would be breakfast. So the equivalent of when you're having breakfast is you're meant to use the left side of the chair to sit down on, and it's things like that you go, why? I don't understand. As for the other things, that's all I had time to like come up with, but there are a bunch more Feywild nonsensy things like that last one that I am happy for you guys to come up with between sessions, between now and next week, in the Twitch Tales chat in my Discord. Feel free to come up with like random weird archfey things, like when if you drop something and you have to pick it up, you have to use your left hand in order to pick it up if it's been dropped, but only if it's been dropped by you. If you're picking up something from somebody else, you have to pick it up with your right hand. Like weird things that are like that. I don't understand the reason for that, but if you do it, you'll piss off. If you don't do it, you'll piss off a Fey. So those things I think are quite fun, and this book is just filled with those things that you probably won't remember, but as the fairies told you, like you need to you as a material plane person will probably be allowed a little bit of leeway in not doing these things. I imagine the left side of your chair thing signals to others that you only just woke up. Yeah, it might have like a reason in having been in existence to begin with, but
Maybe it's fun to piss off a fae. Maybe. She also, being fascinated by the material plane, might be interested in you fucking up these etiquette things and going, that's cute. They did that thing that would be punishable by death if a fae did it, but the material person did it, and therefore it's funny. Cute, or whatever. So, you never know. You might get away with some things because of you being a material planer. I feel Apis would do their best to be a good representative of the material plane. Yeah, maybe. All right, so you have a little look at this this etiquette book. You finish it off. You don't finish the whole book. You sort of skim reading and finding things that you find are going to be more interesting, more pressing. As I say, you'll come up with those things for me in the chat between sessions, and we'll start implementing them into the Feywild. We'll start to sort of world build that together. Eventually, you put that aside and you start to read about Donga. This is the last thing we're going to do for today's session. So you're going to read about Donga. Actually, I'll put it to a chat. I'll put it to a poll. We've got time before the lady arrives for dinner, or before you guys get called for dinner, to read one more thing. So we'll put it to a poll one more time. What is it that we want to read? Question. What book to read before dinner? We've got the book that tells us about Donga. Donga is the region, kind of like Avalon is for the Merry Gentleman. Donga is the region that the Wild Woman looks over. We've got that one. We've got the map book. The map, again, will also have some information about Donga, just not as detailed about that specific region, but you'll learn about all the other regions as well. We've got books on therianthropy, the Weir curses, and then we've got books on portals. Ooh, 50% of the vote. 50% of the vote wanting to read about Donga, 29% about therianthropy, 17% want to read about portals, and only 4% of people wanted to read the map book. So we will go with reading the Donga book then. In the last few minutes before you have to head off down to dinner. If we don't take 20, would we have time to skim read too? Maybe. Let's see. So let's head to the dice cam. Let's roll you an investigation check. A 2 on your investigation check to skim read this book. So basically it's going to take you the rest of the time just to skim read this book. We're not going to have time to skim read 2. And you're only going to get the information from skim reading it. So the first thing you notice is that there is a little bit of a map at the front, and it is the region on the... where are we? It is the region on the other side of the planet from Peor. It's not exact. It's like two regions round from where you are in Avalon. From the map of it, how much does Apis know about the world of Rin? Because you're in a medieval sort of time. It's not guaranteed that you even recognize the different countries and the continents of the other place. So I'm going to roll you now a... it comes up a few times. Geography check. I've been toying with it for a few years now. The idea of putting in another intelligence-based skill that's like about geography, distances to things, countries, and all sorts of stuff. Because like a few times people have asked like, where is this town from here and stuff, and I sometimes want to roll a geography check to see if you know. You would not be proficient in this, so it's just going to be a straight intelligence roll. Let's see. Oh, nice. 18 on the dice, plus 3. For some reason, Apis is aware of a continent on Rin called Mayaka. 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 It is between the continent of Triokoksha and Kayanua. And off to the east of this continent is Changji. So it's kind of like a middle continent, if you like. Maybe Apis has seen a world map at some point and had a little look at them. If you were to spread out the world map of Rin, and you would cut it down one side on the Frintek Ocean, the largest ocean, the one that's kind of like the Pacific Ocean, if you use that as the side of your map, then I'm not even attempting to write those down. Mayaka would be in the center. Kayanua is to the north, Triokoksha is to the west, Changji is to the east, and Baronska is to the south of it, and Peor is sort of to the southwest of it. So she is from Mayaka, and it's a central kind of a region. Sorry, she is the leader of Donga. Donga is the equivalent to Mayaka. As you can see in the front of the Donga book, the little map that looks like it makes you go, oh, that's straight up the shape of Mayaka. And this is probably the first time that you realise all of the regions in the Feywild are direct correspondence to places in Rin. Mayaka, for your benefit, out of character, meta level, Mayaka is my equivalent to South America. So the Latin American countries, Brazil and Argentina, all of those sorts of cultures, terrains, weather, all those sorts of things, that's the sort of thing you can expect from Mayaka. And she rules over that, the Feywild equivalent of that continent. Let's see. So, with a skim read, that's pretty much all you're going to get. You're gonna skim read that there's lots of untouched forests in there, like huge jungles and rainforests. You're going to get that the weather in Donga is mostly tropical, is the word I was looking for. So you gather that the weather in Donga is mostly tropical, storms and cyclones and heavy rainstorms, but then also like really humid days of great heat. There's also lots of beasts there, huge beasts, wild beasts, things that are like mammoth-sized beasts. Lots of displacer beasts as well. It's said that the largest population of displacer beasts on the Feywild is on Donga. Lots of blink dogs and feral blink dogs and dogs that have like blink wolves essentially. There's all sorts of other Fey-like beasts. The Gorillans are from Donga. Giant sloths, yeah. It's said that the hippopotamor probably lives in Donga as well, and the name sounds familiar to you from some stories that you've heard of, but you're not exactly sure what the hippopotamor is. You feel like you've heard of it. Also, it's said that the common Fey prank of the Gronkel is said to probably have originated from the beasts of Donga's forests, as an amalgamation of a gorillan and it names some other beasts that you've not heard of. So that's the flora, the fauna. The plant life in Donga is said to be of great medical interest. We've definitely heard of it. Apis may not, but it's definitely yeah. Great medical benefit of the plants in the rainforests. The people who live in Donga seem to be welcoming, but are more welcoming to each other, but more isolated in their communities. They live more tribal lives and more hunter-gatherer kind of nomadic lives rather than agricultural, stay in one place kind of lives. That's the people, the flora, the fauna, the weather. I think that's pretty much all you're going to get with a skim read of Donga, but it's very much, it epitomizes wild and wilderness. Wild, untamed forests. And it seems like as she is the head of this region, the Lady of Donga, she's in charge of it, and she has probably cultivated that because her name is the Wild Woman, and that's probably because she enjoys untamed wilderness. As you get to the end of this book, there is not an alarm, a bell starts ringing throughout the house. It seems like it might be connected magically to a network of bells, because as the distant bell starts ringing, very quickly you hear closer bells start ringing, and then a bell over the door in the library starts ringing. And as you look up, you see that it has a little plaque underneath that particular bell that says dinner time. And that is where we're going to leave it for today. And we'll pick up with the dinner next week on next episode. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Speak to you next time. Bye. Oh, hey, look at that. It's the end of the video. don't forget to hit subscribe. See if you can get me to that next arbitrary milestone of 10,000 subscribers. That'd be pretty cool. Thank you.